The heel came down at my face out of a clear blue sky, and the whole crowd exhaled at once, the way a crowd does when it already knows how a thing ends. Wind and cloud leg, textbook. How Jianming had jumped, twisted, and dropped it on me like a man closing a car door, and I got both forearms up and took it, and it drove me back 3 full steps across the steel platform with my boots screaming. Somewhere above me a voice said, rather mediocre, in the tone people use for weather. Another one agreed. On the stone tiers around the arena, 4,000 or 5,000 outer Sect disciples of the Cloud Water Sect settled in to watch a nobody get folded up. And honestly, on paper, they were right. 200 of us had survived down to the semifinals. 10 groups of 20. Round robin, top 5 out of each group go through. I drew group 7, and 13 of the other 19 were 9th layer of the spirit origin realm. I was 8th. The commentator's exact words when the brackets went up were that my draw had completely extinguished any remaining hope. I remember them because I wrote them down. Hao's face lit up mid-air. He felt me give ground, and you could watch the thought arrive behind his eyes. We can win this. And I let him have it, because a man who thinks he is winning stops looking at his feet. His feet, at that moment, were glued to my palms. Not metaphorically. My spirit essence carries water intent, and water does not block. Water accepts. His leg came down, my hands went with it, and by the time he understood that he was no longer standing on the platform but standing on me, I had already turned my wrists over. Peacock grabs its tail. The air around him turned into a whirlpool. He went up, went around, and came down through the arena floor hard enough to crack forged steel into a spider web. And I heard a rib go from 4 feet away, which is a sound you do not forget. Then I put Sky Eagle Hand about an inch from his throat and stopped. The tears went strange and quiet. Not because I had won, because of what I had won with. 9 refinements, bone-forging fist. Peacock grabs its tail, Sky Eagle Hand. That is the free introductory boxing they hand every outer Sect disciple on day 1. The stuff you drop the second anybody sells you something with a rank on it. Somebody in the 3rd row said it out loud, half laughing and half horrified. Who spends that much time on basic boxing? Me. I do. I had ground that garbage all the way to perfection, and then I had gone and made water intent my first intent on top of it, which is a 30% bonus on every martial skill I own, forever. That is the whole trick. That is the entire cheat. I stepped off the platform and heard my own name being asked, twice, by people who had not bothered to learn it that morning. Chen Xuanyi. Nobody. 8th layer. Group 7. 19 more matches to go. I will save you the play-by-play of all 19, because 19 fights in 4 days is not a story, it is a job. Day 1 I beat 2 boys below my realm, which nobody claps for, and then I lost 3 in a row. All 3 to 9th layers. One of them lasted 300 exchanges before I ran dry and he put me on my back. Another one beat me in about 11 seconds, which was educational in a different way. By the end of day 1, I was 4 and 6 and thoroughly mid-table. And I was fine with it, because I was not there to win. Here's the thing people get wrong about me, and I want it on the record early. I'm not the protagonist of a novel. I know exactly what that looks like. I have read hundreds of them. I even wrote one, and we will get to that disaster later. In those books, the guy has a panel in his head, and he dumps free points into strength until the numbers look like a phone bill. My panel does not do that. My panel shows me a number. That is all it does. It tells me, with perfect accuracy, exactly how much homework I have left. So when a force-promoted 9th layer with a chest like a wine barrel came at me in the last match of day 1, I did not out-talent him. I outlasted him. My cultivation technique recovers spirit essence like a spring refilling a bucket. And after 9 fights, I was sitting at 80% while he was scraping 50. 300 moves later, he was gulping air, and I was not. And I drew my sword once, and it was over. 4 and 6 going into day 2. 7 points from 18 fights, and 1 name left on my list. I had been saving myself for that name since the brackets went up. Meanwhile, about 1,000 miles away in a mansion I had not set foot in for 3 years, 6 old men were sitting in the dark, arguing about me. I was not there for this, obviously. I got the details much later, and when I did, I laughed for a solid minute. The Huainan Chen family, my blood clan. A cultivation family with exactly 1 true essence realm cultivator in it. An old patriarch who never puts his pipe down, and a hall full of elders who had gone a full decade without putting a single Chen into the inner sect of anything. 4th elder, thin man, face like a hatchet, was making the case. It is Chen bloodline, he said. If the family had not protected those spiritual fields when the boy's parents died, they would have been picked clean before the funeral was over. Where does he think his starting capital came from? Which is a beautiful sentence. It is also the sound of a man who has just remembered that a stray dog he never fed has come back wearing a gold collar. Somebody else, the one with a working brain, said the smarter thing. That kid sold his spirit field and walked to the Cloudwater Sect alone, on foot, with nobody's permission. He is very opinionated. Do not tell him he owes us. Appeal to his emotions. Even if we cannot tie him to the family, he should at least be a strong ally outside it. The war had happened 8 years earlier. It had gutted them. It had also killed the parents of the body I was walking around in, which is a debt I did not incur and inherited anyway. They voted, and they sent the 13th Elder, a man named Chen Bojun. Remember that name. He is going to matter more than every other person in this hall combined, and none of them, including him, had the faintest idea. Day 2, Match 19, the last name on my list, Wei Kongrue, 9th layer middle now. 1 month earlier, at the 10 Courtyards competition, he had hit me with Heavenly Thunderhand while I was 7th layer, and I had gone off the platform in a single exchange. One move, not a fight, a demonstration. He walked up, looked straight at me, and did not recognize me. That is not arrogance, by the way. That is worse. He genuinely did not remember. A month ago, I had been a piece of scenery he walked past. So I opened with the thing I had been hoarding for 4 days. I had not drawn my sword with intent in a single one of the previous 18 matches. Not once. Sword drawing technique charges the longer you leave it sheathed, and I had spent 2 entire days getting punched by strangers rather than spend that charge. And when I finally pulled Silver Shadow out of its scabbard, the sound it made was not a ring, it was a tearing. Wei Kongrue's face changed for the first time. Sword intent? He said, almost a question. And then his hair stood up. I mean that literally. His hair and beard lifted off his skin and stood straight out, crawling with a wisp of genuine lightning concept. And the arena smelled like a storm about to break. And I remember thinking, oh, so he has been busy too. We went at it for 100 exchanges, then 200. He drove me back and I gave ground and came in again and got driven back. And somewhere around the middle of it I heard myself saying, out loud, difficult, 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 which is not a battle cry, it is what an accountant says. Then he found the gap, and a web of lightning caught me flush, and I went off the platform, and I bled on the stones. I lost. Cleanly. Nobody argued. But a month ago, it was 1 move, and today, it was over 200. And while I was walking off with my face full of my own blood, I turned around and told him something, and he did not hear me, and I did not need him to. Just wait. The next time we meet is the time I pass you. Then, as I was still limping toward the medical tents, the panel put up its little quiet line, where nobody else can see it. Cloud smoke steps, plus 19. 999 out of 1,000. And then it rolled over. Breakthrough. Perfection. 200 exchanges with a lightning god had done to my footwork what 6 months of drilling had not. I stood there in the walkway, bleeding on my own shoes and grinning like an idiot at absolutely nothing. The grand competition ran another 2 weeks after that. Guan Fenglie won it. You will hear that name again for the rest of your life if you spend any time near this sect. He took the finals and then, standing on the platform, in front of everybody, he ascended to the true essence realm on the spot, like a man who had been holding the door shut with his shoulder just to be polite. I got knocked out in the semis and walked away with a very small amount of fame, and I was genuinely, deeply glad about it. Because here is a rule I believe in with my whole chest. Before you are strong enough, a reputation is a death warrant with your address on it. Fame gets you invited to things where the other guests are stronger than you. My plan was never to be number 1. My plan was to survive and quietly get rich. So the Peak Masters came down to pick. A man in a plain black robe, with the general air of someone dragged out of a nap, looked at my file and said, that one. I got put down for Xuan Shui Peak. I bowed and shut up and did not ask a single question. His name was Lingbo Zhenren. I would not meet him properly for another 10 years, and by then, he would have already spent something on me that I had no idea about. They flew us in on a giant shadow of a sword, 100 new inner sect disciples standing on a blade the size of a barge, over an ocean of cloud, toward mountains that came up through it like islands. Somebody threw up, somebody else cried. I stood at the front and thought about spirit stones. They swore us in at the Ancestral Master Hall on Tongtian Peak, which is the kind of room that makes atheists nervous. Portraits 3,000 years old down both walls. Some of the faces you can see. Some of them you look directly at, and your eyes slide off, like the paint refuses to be looked at. And nobody explains that, and nobody asks. We knelt in incense smoke thick enough to chew and swore an oath, and I meant about 60% of it, which I suspect is the historical average. Then they walked us up to our peaks, and a man in white robes sat 32 of us down and explained the deal. His name was Song Mingxuan. Gentle voice, the sort of senior brother who apologizes when he corrects you. 3 years free of assigned missions, he said. 3,000 contribution points a month, no strings. Half price on any technique below yellow rank. And a personal immortal cave with its own spirit gathering array. Permanently. which after 3 years of begging for 3 free days a year in the outer sect nearly made me sit down. Then he told us the other half. 30 years, he said, still gently. If you have not reached the true essence realm within 30 years, you are stripped of inner sect status and reassigned as an outer sect deacon. Permanently. There is no appeal and there is no second attempt. The inner circle, he said, does not cultivate useless people. Nobody made a sound. 30 years sounds like forever when you are 18. It is not. I did the arithmetic on the walk back, and it came out to about 1.5% of the disciples in that room, historically. And I decided right then that I was going to be boring about this for a very long time. The congratulation gifts started arriving before I had unpacked. The Hu family of Qingshan Town, the Four family alliance of Hutang Town, the Guo family of Luo Shui. Little mortal-adjacent cultivation clans I had done odd jobs for back when I needed the money, all of them suddenly extremely interested in my continued good health. I kept the cheap gifts and sent back something of equal value, every time, immediately. That is not honor, that is bookkeeping. One day I am going to want a piece of land with a spirit vein under it, and land needs hands, and hands need families who remember you as the man who paid his debts, and not as the man who took their jade and vanished into a mountain. Then the last letter came, and it was from the old patriarch of the Huainan Chen family, in his own handwriting, and it was very good. That is what made it dangerous. It apologized. It made no demands. It did not mention the 8 years of nothing. And then it offered me any 3 martial skills from the family legacy, at any rank, my choice, plus any 3 items out of the treasury. And, by the way, the family had already bought back the spiritual field I sold to pay for my own entrance exam. It was waiting for me. I sat with that letter for a long time, because I wanted 2 things in that vault. I knew there was a fragment of a profound rank secret technique in the Chen legacy, the kind of thing contribution points cannot touch. And I wanted to know how this body's parents actually died, 8 years ago, in a war nobody in that family will describe in detail. I took over someone else's life. I did not ask for it, and I cannot give it back. The least I can do is close his accounts. But the moment you accept a gift that large, you are owned, and everyone involved knows it. And the polite letter is the leash arriving in a nice box. So I did the coward's thing, which is also the correct thing. I thanked them warmly, and I stalled. The scripture pavilion of Xuanshui Peak had no formations on it. No guards, no registration desk. Just a slovenly old man in gray sitting on the steps with his robe open at the chest, reading a book with a smile on his face that I would describe as lewd, and reading it slowly, savoring it, the way you eat something you know is bad for you. I got close enough to see the title page, and my soul left my body. Xiao Ming's Immortal Cultivation Chronicle. Let me explain, and I want you to understand that I did this for perfectly logical reasons. About a year earlier, I had a theory that faith power was real and harvestable, and that if enough people fervently consumed something I made, my panel might register it. So I wrote a serialized novel. A trashy one, extremely trashy, aimed squarely at bored young cultivators with spare coin, and I wanted on the record that the market research was sound. The theory was wrong. 0 faith power. Not 1 point. So I quit. Mid-arc. In the middle of the biggest cliffhanger in the thing, I stopped writing, took my last payment, and walked away. The publisher hired a ghostwriter to finish it. The readers found out. A cultivator smashed up a bookstore. There were, I am told, organized letter campaigns. And now here was an old man in the scripture pavilion of my own peak, reading it. And I had exactly one clear thought. If anyone in this sect ever finds out I wrote this, I will be locked in a dark room and not allowed to eat until I produce 50 chapters a day. He looked up. "Are you here for the free techniques?" he said. "Yes, senior." He held out his hand. 12 spirit stones for the overview. I want to be clear that this man was not selling me anything. Those 11 techniques were free, hanging on the wall behind him. And I paid him 12 spirit stones for a summary of a list I could read myself. Because I could not tell what he was, and I was not going to find out the interesting way. 4 of the 11, he said, actually go all the way to the Dongzhen realm. The other 7 are crippled, and they will strand you at true essence forever. Then he stopped talking and looked at his own palm. 20 more, I said. For which one is which? This child is teachable, he said, delighted, and took the 20. The 4 real ones were 100 Refinements of Frost, Eun Gui Shui Scripture, Supreme Great River, and Purple Cloud Returning to Origin. I took Eun Gui Shui. He raised an eyebrow at that, because on paper it is the worst of the 4. Slowest to raise a level. Nobody with connections takes it. What it does is produce the purest, true essence of the lot, which means smaller bottlenecks, forever, at the cost of taking roughly twice as long to get anywhere. It is a technique that only pays if you are willing to grind until the sun burns out. He looked at me for a second too long, and I understood that he had seen the whole shape of me from the moment I opened my mouth, and I left 32 spirit stones lighter and did not look back. He went back to my book. 10 days to enter the new technique, half a month to the second layer of it. That sounds insane, and it is not, because I did the ugliest thing you can do at that stage. I took my 4 hard-won layers of the water origin art and dissolved them. All of it. Fuel for the new furnace. Complete teardown, complete rebuild. And when I stood up out of it, my raw strength was 20% higher than the day I sat down. 2 more months, and I was at the 3rd layer of Yiyuan Gui Shui, and sitting at Spirit Origin 8th layer middle peak width. And I checked this twice, no bottleneck whatsoever. None. The wall was just not there. I want to be honest about how that felt. It felt like cheating. It was not cheating. It was the interest payment on 18 months of the most boring work in that entire mountain. Then, Zhou Qinghai's message talisman lit up. Gathering of the 17th branch courtyard alumni, half a month out, Shen Hongzhou coming too. Stick together for warmth, he wrote, which is what people say when they mean network with me. I accepted, and then I went down into the Xuan Shui Dark River, 10 contribution points a day to enter. An underground river under the peak, and only the first level is open to Spirit Origin cultivators. And the notice at the entrance says, in the flat voice all Sect notices use, that dangerous wren beasts occasionally surge up from unknown areas. Unknown areas, under my own mountain. Nobody thought that was worth a follow-up sentence. The dark river is beautiful, which I did not expect. Glowing stones in the walls, blind fish lit up like paper lanterns drifting past your face, and cold black water going somewhere it does not tell you about. I was there for essence of gooey water. It is the pure water element wrung out of ordinary water, one of the 5 elemental essences, and 1 drop of it sells for over 300 spirit stones on the outside, because almost nobody can be bothered to make it. I found out why. 10 days. 10 days and nights, submerged, holding hundreds of tons of river water in a slow rotation with my spirit essence, refining, refining, refining. 1 drop. I held it up in the dark and looked at it, and said, out loud, to a cave, well, I can give up on the idea of earning spirit stones with this. Then I swallowed it, because at least the panel would move, and it did. Proficiency +2, and the drop kicked me straight through into Spirit Origin 8th layer. Late on the way down, which was the only part of that fortnight that paid. I was packing up when a whirlpool went past me in the current. Just a little one, a twist of water spinning around itself, and something in the back of my head went click and then would not come back. I spent 2 days chasing that click. Then it arrived. And it arrived from about 9,000 miles and 1 whole lifetime away in a classroom, from a man drawing a spinning tube on a blackboard. Centrifugal force. You separate cream from milk by spinning it, because the heavier part goes to the outside. An essence of gooey water is roughly 10 times denser than the water it hides in. I stopped refining the whole sphere at once. I spun it instead, a suspended ball of river water rotating hard while I worked it, and let the heavy part collect where the heavy part wants to go. And then I only refined that. 3 days later, 1 drop. 3 days instead of 10. 3 times the yield of a method this sect has been perfecting for 1,000 years, out of half a memory of high school physics from a guy who was not even good at physics. I told exactly nobody. I was on my way out with my 2 drops and my smugness when the wall opened and something came out of it. 10 feet of black shadow out of a flooded side cave, and the strike hit before I registered it as a shape. 9th layer power, minimum. My water shields did not slow it, they just stopped existing. My robes tore off my back. It cracked me through an entire stratum of rock into a completely different tributary, and the only reason my spine is still in one piece is a set of Xuan Yuan protective armor under the robes that I had been quietly wearing for 2 years and never mentioned to anyone. I came out of the rock in a cloud of silt with my ears ringing. The thing came through after me. Black, horned, mouthful of glass, dragging demonic chi behind it like smoke off a fire. It charged, and I drew. Sword drawing technique, everything I had stored. And it split from the tip of its snout down through the tail in 1 line, and the 2 halves went past me on either side. Its skull cracked open on the rocks, and inside it, sitting in the bone, was a pale, glowing bead. I reached for it, and then the entire world moved. A tremor from thousands of meters straight down. Not a rumble, a shove, like something enormous had turned over in its sleep, and the whole dark river shook. And the ceiling of that cavern started coming down in pieces the size of houses. I did not get the bead. I was moving up the river at everything I had when a hand closed on my collar in mid-water and yanked me sideways. And I nearly took a swing at senior brother Song Ming Xuan, true essence realm, true disciple, green robes, still perfectly polite. Junior brother Chen, he said at speed, in an underground river that was collapsing. Good, I am 1 man short. The protective array of the dark river had cracked open, he said, and the underground aquatic tribe was pouring through, and they were coming because they could smell spiritual materials, and the more precious the material, the harder they come. I did the math on that in about a second and a half, and my stomach dropped, because the most precious material within 4 miles of that crack was the 2 drops of essence of gui water in my pocket, refined by me, with a technique I invented. At triple the normal rate, I had rung the dinner bell myself. "Guard this gap," he said, dropping me in front of a 10-foot hole in a shattered light screen. "Hold it until the formation master finishes. It counts as a human-grade mission." And then he was gone. So there I was, alone in the dark, in front of a hole in reality with fish coming out of it. The small ones came first, and I killed small ones for about an hour, which is exactly as thrilling as it sounds. And then I got bored and cut one open. Spirit pearls. In their heads. 1 elemental attribute each, gang metal, gui water, yi wood, sitting there in the skull like a marble in a jar. Every fish in that river was a wallet with fins. I was still holding one up to the light when 5 came out of the gap at once. 2, 9th layer early. 3, 8th, underwater, against fish. There is no version of that where I outrun them, so I did not run. I hit first. Stored sword drawing technique took the leader's head off before the group had finished emerging. The second one came in a straight line, and I threw up circle defense and let a wall of turning water eat the charge. Cloud smoke steps at perfection, which means I do not swim, I simply stop being where the teeth are. And I went between 4 sets of jaws and put Sky Eagle Hand through the second 9th layer's skull from behind, in and out. The third one I pinned to the rock with Silver Shadow through the gills. The 4th I killed with the chi-breaking needle, which is a technique that costs almost nothing and does almost nothing unless you put it in a pinhole. And I put it in a pinhole. The 5th escaped down the river, and I let it. 15 minutes, 4 dead. My spirit essence at 0, and my face, I am told, the color of paper. And then I did the thing that made Song Ming Xuan trust me later, although he never said so. I did not stand heroically on the gap. I went and hid behind a rock about 40 feet away, where I could still see it, because standing directly in front of a hole that fires monsters at you is not bravery, it is a scheduling problem. Song Ming Xuan came back some hours later and asked how it went, and I told him. I told him it had been very close. I told him about the talismans I had burned through, which was a slight exaggeration in the sense that it was a complete fabrication. I mentioned, quietly, not making a thing of it, the one-use treasure I had spent. I said I had survived mostly on luck, and I looked tired while I said it, which took no acting at all. He listened to the entire performance with his hands in his sleeves. Then he glanced at the water, where 4 fish demons had died, and where my sword intent was still visibly dissolving out of it like dye, hours later. Which is not a thing that happens to a man who won on luck. He knew. He knew the whole time. He paid me anyway, and I have thought about why for years. And I think the answer is simple. Either version of the story ends with the gap held, and he did not much care which one was true. 13,000 contribution points, about 130 spirit stones, a jade slip of alchemy basics, which he pushed across to me with a comment that I have never forgotten. "Your control of spirit essence is unusually fine," he said. "Stop swallowing raw essence of gooey water like a barbarian. Refine it into gooey water pills." And the mission counted as my mandatory quota for the following year, which I had now completed a year early. I asked him what the Great Formation in the Dark River actually seals. He smiled and did not answer. I asked where the aquatic tribe comes from. He smiled and did not answer that either. I did not ask a third time. And I want to point out that this was the correct decision, and also that I thought about those 2 non-answers for the next 10 years. Zhou Qinghai's gathering was at Poyang Lake, and it was, in the technical sense, a party. 20-odd new intersect disciples, spirit wine, a pavilion out over the water, and everyone present quietly pricing everyone else. Shen Hongzhou got to me first. We had fought each other in the 17th courtyard rankings, back when we were close enough in strength that it went either way. He had made 8th layer middle, which is respectable. He refused to call me senior brother anymore. "Just call me fellow Taoist," he said. "I am not worthy of the other thing." I told him not to be ridiculous. He smiled and changed the subject. I found out much later what he had actually been thinking at that table. Half a year ago, we were equal. Today, he would put me down inside 10 moves. And the reason is that he trains 3 or 4 times the hours I do. 2 years of his work is 7 or 8 of mine. He was not bitter about it. He went home and started doing the hours. That is a rarer thing than talent. Then Xiao Lei of Liayang Peak stood up and asked the room a question. Xiao Lei was an intermediate artifact refiner, pushing for advanced, which is a big deal, and he carried himself like it. "Does anyone here," he said, "have access to essence of gooey water? Even 1 drop. I will pay very well." Silence. Of course, silence. It takes a 9th layer alchemist 10 days in a freezing river to make 1 drop. I put a jade bottle on the table. The room made a noise. Xiaolei made a bigger one. We closed the deal in about 4 minutes. 250 spirit stones, an upgrade on my silver shadow to intermediate grade, and a human-grade scabbard forged from the spirit pearls I had pulled out of those fish heads. Then Gubo of Tianmu Peak, who grows spirit medicine for a living, and who had been watching me the whole time, asked if I could supply him standing, monthly, forever. And he would pay in seeds and herbs instead of stones. Yes, I could. I want you to appreciate the shape of this. 10 days of misery, 1 drop, a bad idea about a whirlpool. And now I had 2 contracts and a monopoly on a substance that an entire mountain of alchemists cannot be bothered to produce. Zhou Qinghai tried to recruit me for a ruin expedition, and I turned him down. 3 years, I said. I need 3 years of grinding first. And then, after everyone left, there was a coda I only heard about years later, and it is the reason I am telling you about that party at all. Zhou Qinghai has a 3rd master, true essence realm. The man appears out of thin air the way those people do, praised the guest list, and then said something to his nephew that Zhou Qinghai did not enjoy. You have built a beautiful network, he said, and let your cultivation rot. You will learn this the day your poor cousin passes you. I give it a year and a half. He did not mean a cousin. He meant me. He had been watching the only person at that table who had not slacked off for a single day since promotion, and he had already done the arithmetic. He was wrong, by the way. It took 11 months. I bought the cheapest pill furnace in the market and 100 spirit stones of the worst herbs Gubo had, and I started on the single dumbest recipe in the entire jade slip, the chi sensing pill. Mortals take it. It is the alchemical equivalent of boiling an egg. 10 days, 200 pills. Financially, it was almost exactly break even, which is to say a total waste of 10 days, except that my panel grew a new section, Cultivation Arts and Crafts, Alchemy, Elementary, 7 out of 10. And this is the part I have never said out loud to anyone in this world, so listen. Every other alchemist alive has the same problem. They cannot feel low-level practice paying off. They cannot measure it. So they do what feels productive, which is burn astronomical amounts of expensive material on advanced formulas. And they learn slowly and expensively, and half of them plateau forever. I can watch the bar, which means I can do the cheapest possible work, watch it pay, and the exact second it stops paying, drop it and move. Not one wasted herb, not one wasted day. I ground the other 3 basic formulas the same way. Meridian activating, fasting, chi melting, all to major achievement, and the section rolled over to alchemy, intermediate, 11 out of 100. And my cultivation went to 8th layer late peak while I was not even looking at it. Then I hit the wall, and the wall was stupid. I was out of pill formulas, and pill formulas are faction property. You do not buy them. You inherit them, or you win them, or you take them off a corpse. Silver Shadow came back from Xiaolei with an intermediate grade edge and a scabbard that hums when you draw it, which turned out to help charge the sword drawing technique, which Xiaolei had not promised and had done anyway. The inner gate market is the size of a county. I spent a day walking it and priced every pill formula on offer, and the answer was always the same, which is that they are priced for people who intend to print money with them, not for a man who mainly wants a number in his head to move. So I went sideways. First, I stopped selling my pills to the Baibao Pavilion, who buy at half price because they can, and set up on a street stall like a peasant. Cleared about 10 stones of profit and my dignity, which I did not need. Then I sold chi-sensing pills to the Hu family and the Hutong Alliance at 100% margin. To them, a genuine inner sect pill is a miracle. To me, it was Tuesday. And while I was at it, I put every one of those families to work hunting pill formulas for me. And then I found the thing. A broke 4th layer cultivator at the end of a row, selling martial skills as books. Paper books, not jade slips. Nobody buys martial skills as books, because a book can be a forgery, and a jade slip mostly cannot. So a book goes for about 1/10 of the price of the real thing. It is a stall for gamblers. He had overturning sea, 3-fold waves, human-grade advanced palm technique, 40 or 50 spirit stones. An advanced human-grade technique, honestly sold, is out of my price range for another 2 years. So I read the first page standing there, and the second, and I could feel my own water intent nodding along. And I made a judgment call. I know water better than a forger does. I bought it. Then, 2 months in the dark river. 10 drops of gooey water off the centrifuge, which is more than any single alchemist in the sect produced that season. Spirit origin, 8th layer perfection. Half a month of study on top of that, and something like 100 failed attempts. And my arms aching like I had been shoveling. And then, it landed. A handprint 10 feet across, punched a meter deep into the bed of a rushing underground river, water blown clear out of the channel in both directions. First level of 3, bought off a beggar for 40 stones. And it already outclassed everything else I owned. Bottlenecked on every single front at once, I went and read the Internal Affairs mission board, like a man reading job ads. And I took number 721. 10 ghost grasses, 100-year grade, human-grade material, payment, the 100 herb pill formula. The place they grow is called Yinfeng Valley, and the Sect's own description of it reads like a warning label somebody got tired of writing. It is a wound in the world. Ghost wind boils up out of the ground there, and has been doing it for longer than the Sect has existed. Black fog year-round, ghosts and bone demons breeding in it faster than anyone can burn them. Every 20 or 30 years the Sect sends a team in and sweeps it, purely so that nothing above Spirit Origin 9th layer ever gets the time to grow. Which, and I said this out loud on the road, is fantastic news for me. Yinfeng City sits outside it. 50,000 mortals, about 1,000 cultivators, all of them making a living off a hole in the earth that produces monsters. 5 spirit stones to enter. I showed my inner Sect token, and the toll evaporated. And the 2 outer Sect disciples on the gate looked at that token with an expression I recognized from the inside, having worn it myself 2 years earlier. A guide sold me a map. All the outer zone grass is picked clean, he told me, and had been for a century. 100-year ghost grass only grows in the core. I paid him and walked in, and behind me, 2 cultivators leaning on the gate watched my token flash and looked at each other. Their conversation went like this, out in the Gobi, and I did not hear a word of it until much later. An inner Sect disciple, said the square-faced one. Here, now. Has the news leaked? The tall, thin one shook his head. Our people in Luo Shui warned us we are being watched. Cloudwater lackeys have been sniffing around the Rogue Cultivator Alliance for a month. It is because the Sect ordered us to seize that item from the Guo family, said the first one. And then they both went quiet in the way people do when they realize they have said the quiet thing. Follow him, said the tall one. If he is investigating, kill him and dress it as a demon attack. Nobody counts bodies in Yinfeng. He is only 8th layer, said the other, cheering up. We might even pry some inner Sect intelligence out of him first. I would like the record to show that they were working off 2-week-old information, and that this is the single most expensive filing error either of them ever made. The valley is gray. Not dark, gray, like a painting somebody left in the sun. Dead trees with their branches up like something being arrested. Vines hanging in shapes I did not enjoy. Something came out of the sand at me in the first hour. A scorpion the size of a dog. Its venom hit the ground where I had been standing and the ground dissolved. So I killed it with the sword still in the scabbard. I was not putting my only good blade into that. Ghosts ride the cold wind here. Bone demons come up out of the shale, centuries of yin wind having cured them like leather. And I learned the local rule fast, and it is the rule of every dungeon in every world. Every treasure has a guard. So you do not look for the herb. You look for the monsters, and then you look at what they are standing on. I found my first 100-year ghost grass under a bone demon's foot on day 2, which also meant I was already in the core. I had walked right through the middle zone without noticing, and nobody had stopped me, and I stood there for a moment doing the math on what that said about the middle zone. Then I came over a ridge and looked down into a bowl full of ghosts. There were maybe 100 of them, plus bone demons in loose ranks around a hill of bones about 30 feet high, and on top of the hill, in armor, with a sword across its knees, was a skeleton the size of 2 men. 9th layer, early, a king. Now a proper protagonist charges. A proper protagonist announces himself. I am not a proper protagonist. I am a man who played video games for 20 years. So I pulled. I got downwind, rustled some weeds, and drew 3 or 4 off the edge of the group and around behind a rock, and killed them where the others could not see. Then I did it again. Then again. 100 became 80. 80 became 40. Around 40, the elite guards noticed. These things have roughly the intelligence of a 6-year-old. They cannot count, but they can see. And what they could see was that the crowd was thinning, so they sent a scout. He did not come back. They sent another one. He did not come back either. They sent them one at a time, for about an hour, in a slow, methodical line, into a rock I was standing behind. And I want to be clear that at no point did any of them consider going in pairs. The king slept through the entire thing. I got it down to the last 8th layer ghost, killed it. And then, walking back up the slope with my arms full of ghost grass, I stepped on something that crunched. The king woke up. It stood, and it was genuinely impressive, and it raised the sword, and its voice came out like a door being forced. "You lowly human," it said. "Minions, charge!" And one bone imp charged. 1st layer, bone knife. all alone, sprinting across the empty valley floor toward me, carrying, and I want to be fair to it, the momentum of 1,000 troops. It made it about 3 meters before it tripped over a femur. Its skull came off and rolled across the ground and stopped against my boot. Nobody said anything. A cold wind went through the bowl. A leaf came down out of nowhere and skated across the bones. The king turned its head very slowly and looked around at its kingdom. "Where," it said, "are my little brothers?" Then it attacked, and it was actually good. Cloud smoke steps got me out of the way of the first swing, which took a boulder in half. Sword drawing technique caved in its whole left side and did not kill it. Because the bones of a 9th layer Bone King are about as hard as a quasi-artifact, which is a thing I learned by hitting one with everything I had and watching it get back up. Then it used its talent, and the entire valley floor erupted. Bone spikes, everywhere, coming up through the ground in waves, no ground left to stand on, no direction to run. So I went up, straight up, off the last flat stone, and at the top of the jump, I put both palms down and dropped overturning sea 3-fold waves on it from above. A handprint 10 feet across came down out of the sky and flattened the bone hill, and drove the king a body length into the earth like a nail. First real fight with that technique, and it turned a 9th layer boss into a hole. I climbed down and started picking the grass off the wreck, and I was 3 stems in when I threw myself backwards without deciding to. Thorn vines closed on the air where my neck had been. I had known since the valley mouth. Alchemy sharpens your spiritual sense in a way nothing else does. And after 2 years of feeling for impurities inside a sealed furnace, 2 men following me through fog is not subtle. So I had faked it. The tiredness was real. The opening was not. Sword drawing technique came out and did not go for them. It went for the air around them, and tore both invisibility talismans off them like wet paper. "You sneaky bastards," I said. "Did you really think I never noticed you?" The tall one abandoned his partner immediately, which tells you everything about their organization, and I put the chi-breaking needle through the back of his head at 40 paces. When he went down, there was one small red mark on his forehead, and nothing else to see. The square-faced one had a gut wound, and was backing up with his hands out. I stepped around behind him and broke his neck, and I have thought about that since, and I still would. 700 spirit stones between them. 1 mid-grade spirit stone, which is worth 100 ordinary ones, and sells for 200 or 300, and which I had never held in my life. And a token. Old, dark, with 2 characters on it. Hanhai. The Hanhai sect is Cloudwater's opposite number on the High Continent. They have been trying to kill each other for centuries. It is the war that made the Water Sword Immortal famous, and every child in this sect grows up on those stories. 2 Hanhai agents, inside Cloudwater territory, with almost empty storage pouches, which means they were not here to buy anything. They were here to take something. I stood in the fog, holding a token that could get me killed by either side, and thought about it for exactly as long as it deserved. Sects colliding is 2 buildings falling into each other. I am an ant in one of them. I can worry about the architecture, or I can get stronger. 7 days later, I had all 10 grasses. The last one cost me a 2-mile chase by a pair of 9th layer late ghosts, and I survived that on footwork, a breath concealment technique, and the dead men's own invisibility talismans, which is the most satisfying way to spend a man's belongings. I went and collected my 100 herb pill formula, and then I did the thing that no protagonist in any book I have ever read does. I walked into the internal affairs hall, put the Hanhai token on the desk, and told Song Ming Xuan everything. Not because I am noble, because holding an enemy sect's token in secret is a noose you tie yourself, and killing 2 enemy spies is a merit that nobody, ever, under any circumstances, can take away from you. The mission got reclassified from human grade to yellow rank on the spot, and when he asked what I wanted, I did not ask for stones. I asked for something that would keep me alive. He gave me wind and cloud formless body, top-tier human-grade movement art with a bite of yellow rank in it, and he picked it personally, because he had noticed that my cloud smoke steps was already at perfection, and this one is built to eat that as a foundation. Behind me, as I walked out, a message light went up off the roof toward the main peak at a speed that told me my 2 dead men were a much larger problem than anyone was going to explain to an 8th layer. 10 days to getting started, half a month to minor achievement. My perfect cloud smoke steps went into it as fuel, and I did not mourn it for 1 second. I should tell you my actual method, because it is the only thing about me worth copying. When a track stops paying, I do not grind it harder. I cut the hours down to a daily minimum, just enough that the skill does not rust, and I move my real effort somewhere else. Then I come back in 3 months, and the wall is thinner, because the rest of me grew around it, rivers and seas. You do not push a river, you just make sure it never stops moving. So while my cultivation sat still, I cooked, 100 herb pill. I failed the first 3 batches, and then I hit a 90% success rate. And the reason is not talent. The reason is that I wrote down every failure, changed exactly one variable at a time, and read my own notes, which is a thing I learned in 9 years of compulsory education in a world where I was a completely unremarkable student. 300 spirit stones of herbs went in, 600 spirit stones of pills came out, alchemy proficiency up 40. Then I sold every last thing I owned that was not nailed down, closed every open loop, answered every letter, paid every small debt, and cleaned my cave, on purpose. So that when I sat down, there was nothing at all left in my head. And I put the mid-grade spirit stone I had taken off a dead spy into my hand, and went into seclusion. Half a month later, the wall came down. Spirit Origin, 9th layer. 8th to 9th takes the average outer sect disciple about 5 years, and a large number of them never do it at all. It is the wall where most cultivators quietly become gate guards. I was 17, maybe 18. Nobody wrote it down. And I was not a normal 9th layer. My spirit essence was twice as thick as it should have been, and purer than a 9th middles, because Iyuan Guishui takes forever and gives you this, and stacked on top of that, I had a concept, a full set of perfect basics, and an alchemist's spiritual sense. Against a 9th layer late, I would not have been afraid. I would have been busy. And the first name that came into my head, sitting on the floor of my cave with my ears still ringing, was Wei Kangre. If you have not improved much, I said to nobody, I will beat you when we meet again. Song Mingxuan ran a 10-day lecture at the end of every year for the 32 newcomers of Xuanshui Peak, and at the end of it came the thing everyone actually attends for, the re-ranking. 3 days a year. You may challenge anyone ranked above you. Winner takes the higher slot. Once a year, no exceptions, no rematches. The board that year read, first, Chen Lihua, 9th perfection. Second, Song Zhongyi, 9th perfection. Third, Guo Guangyi, 9th late peak. 21st, Chen Xuanyi, 9th early. 22nd, Guo Shifeng. The rewards are why people bleed for this. Top 10 gets 10,000 contribution points a month. 11 to 20 gets 5,000. And then, separately, there are merit points. And merit points are the real currency, because 1 merit point trades for 1 mid-grade spirit stone. And more importantly, merit points buy profound rank techniques, which contribution points cannot touch at any quantity. 5 merit points a year for first, 3 for second, 2 for third, 1 each for 4th through 10th, and only for your first 3 years. After that, you get nothing, forever. I looked at the board and told myself the truth. Top 3 is impossible, top 10 is not. And behind me, rank 22 was looking at the same board and having a very different afternoon. Guo Shifeng had better aptitude than me, and a better family than me, and he had known both those facts his entire life. He had spent half of the previous year at home being toasted at banquets and being extremely charming at junior sisters. Come back 2 months ago and started planning how to use the poor Chen cousin as a public stepping stone at the re-ranking. Then he checked the board and found out I was a whole realm above him. He did not say anything, he was raised too well for that. But I caught the look, and I recognized it. And I want to be fair to the man. He was not wrong about the aptitude. While he was being admired, I was in a hole with a notebook, calculating gains and losses. That is the whole difference. If what you were born with is not enough, then what you build has to make up the gap. And building is boring, and boring is available to anybody. Nobody challenged me. That is the funny part. My reputation from the 8th layer days had gotten around, and the entire middle of that board simply declined to touch me. And I stood there for a while getting quietly passed over. So I stood up and skipped the middle of the board entirely. I am Chen Xuanyi, I said, the 21st. I would like to ask senior brother Mo Zixuan, the 9th, for guidance. Mo Zixuan was 9th layer late, 2 small realms above me. The square laughed. Somebody said, does he think this is the outer sect top 10? Somebody else said, more kindly, that I did not recognize my own limits. Mo Zixuan smiled at me, which is the smile a man gives an arrogant child before he teaches him something, and stepped up. Round 1, he opened with his signature. Celestial Starfinger, human-grade mid, minor achievement, and what it looks like is a meteor of starlight coming down out of a clear sky. And the 8th layers in the front row physically flinched, because it feels like the ceiling of the world cracking. I met it with overturning sea 3-fold waves, second wave of power, and the 2 of them ate each other in mid-air, dead even. The smile went off Mo Zixuan's face and did not come back. Round 2, he brought out a golden spear with a dragon pattern down the haft, and he stopped being fancy. Sharpshooter kill. Straight thrusts. Hundreds of them. A storm of them. And there is no counter to a good spear except not being there. So, I was not there. Wind and cloud formless body at minor achievement, phantoms coming off me in every direction. And I deflected what I had to with a palm or a fist, and simply was not present for the rest. A ninth late is about 30% faster than a ninth early. He is supposed to be able to catch me. He could not land one hit. You could watch it happening to him. He went from irritated to furious to something worse, and finally he screamed at me. And I will give you the line exactly as he said it, because it is my favorite thing anyone has ever said to me. If you are a man, fight me fair and square. Do not hide. And I stopped. Dead stop, in midair, both feet on nothing, hand on the hilt. He took it. He went all in, man and spear fused into one golden dragon, everything he had in a single line. I closed my eyes, I opened them, and I drew. Sword drawing technique. Perfection. A year of a few minutes a day, every day, plus an artifact-grade scabbard. And when it came out of that sheath, every sword in that square trembled in its owner's hand. The whole plaza filled up with water sword intent like a tide coming in through a door. When the dust came off the stones, there was a crater, a golden spear lying dead in it, and my blade at Mo Zixuan's throat. 21st to 9th. One fight. Somebody in the crowd said, "Could this be a genius on the level of the Outer Sect top 10? And I heard it, and I hated it. Because I had just done the exact thing I promised myself I would not do, which is be interesting in public. Up on the platform, Songming Xuan watched a technique he had personally handed me come out of me at perfection 11 months later, and thought something I only found out about years afterward. This one, he thought, was traded for, between my master and another peak's lineage head. Day 2, 4 different people challenged me, and it was not close. Day 3 was rank 1 against rank 2, Song Zhongyi against Chen Lihua, and I sat and watched it with my mouth shut, because either of them would have finished me inside 20 moves, and I knew it while it was happening. Payout, 84,000 contribution points, about 840 spirit stones, and 1 merit point. I traded the merit point for a mid-grade spirit stone, and then did not spend it. It went in the drawer next to the other one. A man who grew up poor does not spend the good stone, ever, and I have made peace with that about myself. I went and priced the pill formula I actually wanted, 150,000 contribution points. I was 10,000 short. 2 months on my new 10,000 a month, fine. I can wait 2 months. And then Wei Kang Rui's account closed itself. And I want to be honest about how that felt, because it is not how the books do it. He was 9th layer middle. I had just taken a 9th layer laid off his feet without drawing blood, in front of the whole peak, on a technique he had never seen. There was no rematch. There was never going to be a rematch. He was in the outer sect, and I was not. And by the time our paths could have crossed again, I would be somewhere he could not follow. I passed him while I was busy with something else, and nobody announced it, and it was not satisfying at all. That is the thing nobody tells you about revenge. Sometimes you outgrow it before you get to spend it, and all you are left with is the habit of working. Then everything stopped at once. A full month where my technique would not rise, my martial skills would not rise, and my alchemy would not rise, all 3, simultaneously, like the world had gotten together and agreed. The road after the 9th layer, I wrote in my notes that month, is far harder than I imagined. Zhou Qinghai answered my letter about 6 months late, which was very him, and the answer solved my entire problem. Pill formulas, he wrote, come from exactly 2 places. You buy them from the Internal Affairs Hall, at a price designed to make you cry, or you take them out of a dead man's immortal cave. And he had found one. His expedition had gone out the previous year and failed. They had cracked the outer arrays, gotten as far as the last light screen, seen humanoid puppets standing in the dark on the other side of it, and pulled back like sensible people. The owner of that cave had been an alchemist. They were going again. They wanted a 9th layer sword. They wanted mine. So I wrote back and said yes, and then, before anyone could get clever, I killed the problem in advance. There is a phrase in this world, peach picker, for the man who joins an expedition, contributes nothing, and takes the best fruit. Every group has one, and every group spends the whole trip watching for him, and that suspicion kills more expeditions than monsters do. So I put it on the table in the first letter. I want nothing, I wrote, except a copy of the pill formulas and the alchemy jade slips. Not the treasures, not the artifacts, not a share of the stones, paper. That is not generosity. That is buying 6 people's trust for the price of the one thing I actually came for. 7 of us went. Zhou Qinghai, 9th middle, leading. Du Hanying, built like a door, permanently cheerful, 9th middle, and a body cultivator with the glazed golden body at minor achievement. Zhou Junjie, with a spirit fan, 9th early peak. Kong Xuan, thin and bony and pale, 9th early peak. He Jian, square face, enormous machete, 9th early. And Bai Lan, female formation master, and the only 8th layer in the group, which made her simultaneously the weakest person present and the only reason the trip could happen at all. 9 days out past the edge of the Cloudwater spiritual vein, which is a border you feel rather than see. Inside the Sect's shadow, a family can be ruined and rebuilt in a generation. Outside it, losing does not mean losing. Outside it, losing means nobody remembers your surname. We killed a wolf pack on the 4th night, and something with stripes and too many teeth on the 7th, and on the 5th day I felt eyes on my back and turned around and found absolutely nothing there. That was Zhou Wenjiao, the 3rd master. True Essence Realm, shadowing his nephew's expedition from about a mile up. And the reason I know exactly what he was thinking is that he told people afterward. He was thinking, did that kid just find me? And then, half a year, and he has improved this much. The valley itself is nothing. That is the point of it. You could walk past that valley every day of your life. Bailan stood in front of a blank stretch of rock for 2 hours, and then reached out and peeled it. And I mean peeled. Like tearing a slit in a sheet of paper. Behind the paper was a waterfall, a mountain spring, and a micro-spirit vein leaking out of the stone, and a cave mouth, with the rock around it scorched black from last year's attempt. The last light screen came down, and 6 pairs of crimson eyes opened in the dark. 6 humanoid puppets, 2 at 9th middle, 4 at 9th early, and if you have never fought a puppet, let me save you the education. They do not tire. They do not feel pain. They do not slow down when you hurt them, because you cannot hurt them. Every blow they throw is at exactly 100% power, the first one and the 400th, forever. Which meant that Du Hanying, our tank, whose entire build is take the hit, keep taking hits, outlast them, was standing in the worst possible matchup of his life, and about 90 seconds in, he started bleeding gold through the cracks in his golden body. Zhou Qinghai had his hand inside his robe going for something expensive, and I went sideways instead, ghosted behind the nearest one, and put Sky Eagle hand into the seam under its arm, and pulled out 3 mid-grade spirit stones. The red light in its eyes went out like a lamp. They run on spirit stones. Of course they do. Every artifact in this world runs on something, and a puppet that has stood in a sealed cave for 200 years is running on the biggest battery its maker could afford. And I could find the battery through the shell, because that is what an alchemist's spiritual sense is. It is the skill of feeling what is happening inside a sealed vessel while it is sealed. I have been reading the inside of a pill furnace by touch for 2 years. A closed puppet is a furnace with legs. I said one sentence to the group, the seams, armpit, throat, behind the knee. Then the 9th middle broke Du Hanying's golden body outright and put him into the rock wall hard enough to shower us all with grit. And it leapt for his head. I hit it in midair with overturning C at 80%, 1 palm, not 2. And it went into the far wall like a swatted mouse. Then I opened its waist with Dragon Probing the Sea, which is a basic sword form off the free shelf that they give 12-year-olds, and took the stone out before it finished falling. 15 minutes, 6 puppets, 22 mid-grade spirit stones on the floor of that cave, glowing in a pile. Du Hanying sat against the wall with his chest caved in and gold in his mouth, and started laughing, and could not stop. I survived, he kept saying. I survived this. And Zhou Qinghai, who a year earlier had been the older cousin who was going places while I was nobody, and who had just barely held one of those things, watched me do it 6 times. He did not say anything. But something moved behind his face, and it turned out to be the most valuable thing that happened to anyone on that trip. I took 11 of the 22 stones, plus all 6 wrecked puppet bodies, and everyone agreed instantly because I had killed all 6 of them. I thought I had robbed them blind. Hold that thought. Past the puppets, the cave opened into a cavern the size of a parade ground, and in the middle of it was a tree, crimson, every branch and twig running red the way a blood vessel runs red, roots pushing up through the stone, and hanging on it 3 fruits. Blood dragon fruit. Fruits once a century, human-grade advanced at absolute minimum. And it does not give you power. It raises your aptitude. Permanently. The thing you were born with, the thing everybody says cannot be changed, the thing every family in this world sorts its children by at age 6. Thousands of spirit stones at auction, if one ever reaches an auction. Nobody ran at it. I want to note that, because in the book somebody always runs at it. Bailan swept the whole cavern for traps first, while 6 armed adults stood still. And then we picked all 3 together, in the open, everyone watching everyone. Because the fastest way to die on an expedition is to be alone in a room with something valuable. And behind the tree, in the study, was the real prize. The owner had been a genuine human-grade alchemist, which means true essence realm at minimum, 50-odd pill formulas, and his personal notes, not a manual, his notes. What he tried, what failed, what he suspected and never proved. That is a career. That is the difference between a man who can cook and a man who can invent. Also on the shelf, a Ming Shen pill for spiritual sense, a Windwalker pill, and a Hua Zhen pill, which adds roughly 10% to your odds of breaking into the true essence realm. 7 people, 3 fruits, 1 huazhen pill. And the cavern went completely silent while everyone in it did the arithmetic. Nobody got to say a word about splitting it. Yuan Yang, something has happened. Leave immediately. Third Master came through the roof of that cave as a beam of white light, gathered all 7 of us the way you gather laundry, and threw us out the entrance. And behind us, a sword of light half the sky wide came down on the cave mouth. His life-bound golden bell took it and cracked down the side. The man standing in the air above the valley introduced himself the way that kind of man does, by explaining why we deserved it. Long Jie Xuan, of the Long family, True Essence Realm, currently on the Cloudwater Sect's wanted list. Cloudwater's revenge, he said, looking down at 7 ninth layers and 1 bleeding true essence. As long as you all die out here in the wilderness, who is ever going to know? Because of your Zhou family, he said, the Long family was ground into the dirt. Today, not one Zhou leaves this valley. And then he said the sentence that mattered, and none of us understood it for another 2 years. Do not dream of the law enforcement hall avenging you. Before long, the Cloudwater sect will not be able to take care of itself. Zhou Wenjiao was the stronger of the 2. I want that on the record. He was losing purely because he was standing between a true essence realm cultivator and 7 juniors, which is a fight you cannot win, you can only pay for. He threw us clear, and stayed. We ran, and the road was cut. Long Jie Xuan had told us the truth on his way to killing us, which villains do more often than you would think. He was not the attack, he was the decoy. That descendant of your Zhou family, he had said, is doomed today. Half a mile down the valley, the road closed. A green-robed cultivator at half-step true origin, standing in the middle of it with 2 ninth-layer lates flanking him, another 9th late behind them, and a spread of 8th and 9th layers filling in the sides. Dead end, both directions, professionally done. And Zhou Qinghai started burning his family. I mean that literally. He pulled a golden talisman out of his robe and tore it, and 3 men were chained where they stood by something that came out of the paper. He tore a jade pendant, and it ate the green robe's palm strike and shattered. And then he took out the last one, and I saw his hand shake. It was a jade talisman with a true essence realm double attack sealed inside it. That is not an item a family gives a junior. That is an item a family gives a junior when the family is genuinely afraid. Both 9th layer lates simply stopped existing. The green robe survived it, barely. He came out of the light on his knees with 1 arm gone and his meridians shredded and his road to the true essence realm closed forever, at half-step, 1 door from the rest of his life. A task, he said, and he was not even shouting. A task I randomly accepted has ruined my career. And then he told the rest to charge anyway, because a man with nothing left will spend everyone else's life before his own. Zhou Qinghai was white and empty. He had nothing. So I stepped in front of him. I will take this one, I said. You handle the ones behind. Overturning C met the cripple's strike, and neither of us moved an inch, which surprised us both. And then I stopped trying to be impressive and swarmed him, and I finished him with the basic fist. 9 refinements, bone-forging fist. The free boxing they hand out on day 1. Every punch loaded with water intent and the pressure of the sea behind it. And he had no answer to it, because there is no counter written for a technique nobody respects. Mountain crushing, through the chest, and it was over. The half-step behind him, who had just watched a 9th layer early do that, screamed that he would repay it tenfold, and turned and ran. I let him go. I want to be clear that this was not mercy. A cornered cultivator that far up may be sitting on a life-burning trump card, and mutual destruction is a terrible price for a man who is already leaving. The last 9th late tried the other approach. It is all a misunderstanding, he said, hands out, backing up. Nobody answered him. We just came. Overturning C put him in a crater, and sword drawing technique took his head off before he stopped sliding. The rest ran, and we hunted them down to the last man, across 2 miles of scrub, because letting witnesses go home is a decision you get to make exactly once. Days later, we were back inside the spirit vein, and I slept for 18 hours. Zhou Wenjiao came home, which not everybody expected. His report was short and bad. Long Jie Xuan had escaped by a secret technique, and he had not escaped alone. Somebody had picked him up. And the Long family remnants were in contact with the Manhua sect. That word again. 2nd time in 1 year, from a completely different direction. Zhou Qinghai refused his share of the loot entirely, out of guilt, and insisted on picking last and would not be argued with, which meant that I, as top contributor, picked first. And I took the blood dragon fruit over the huazhen pill. Everyone thought that was strange. The huazhen pill improves your chance of reaching true essence by 10%, and true essence is the wall that ends most cultivators. And I was 9th layer early with that wall in front of me. But the Huazhen pill is a coupon you can only use once. Aptitude is a multiplier on everything I do for the rest of my life, and I intend to have a very long life. Final tally out of that hole: 53 pill formulas plus a real alchemist's private notes, 11 mid-grade spirit stones, 6 dead puppets, the blood dragon fruit, a Mingshen pill, which I bought off He Jian for 3 used mid-grade stones because he did not know what he had, a flood dragon ginseng, which is a main ingredient of the Ningzhen pill that every 9th layer on this continent needs to reach true essence and cannot get, and several hundred ordinary spirit stones. I did not get rich overnight. I got rich the other way. The way where you look at your own storage pouch and briefly cannot make eye contact with it. And there was a coda I only heard about later, and it is the best thing in this whole section. Zhou Qinghai went to his uncle privately, with all the swagger gone, and said this: "In the past I was too obsessed with other things. Those trump cards were my family's, not my strength. Chen Xuanyi's aptitude is only average. He got where he is by refusing to stop. If he can do it, why can I not?" Which is exactly what Third Master had been trying to teach him for 3 years, delivered for free, by the cousin whose name nobody at that first banquet could remember. The blood dragon fruit goes down like warm honey, and about 4 seconds later, it turns into magma. I want to describe this properly. My veins lit up. Red steam came off my skin in sheets. My whole body glowed like a coal you should not touch. And I screamed for a while in a sealed cave, and then I lay on the floor and shook. Results: blood foundation doubled, raw physical strength up about 3 times, and aptitude permanently nudged upward, which is the part you cannot see and cannot measure, and which will pay me back every day for a century. Also, I had to spend 20 minutes scrubbing a layer of gray, stinking sludge off myself afterwards, which is apparently what a body pushes out when it upgrades, and which no cultivation novel has ever mentioned. And then, the same week, I discovered that I had swindled myself. Those 6 priceless puppets, the ones I took instead of stones, worthless, completely, comprehensively worthless, and worthless because of how I killed them. A puppet like that runs on the soul of a half-step realm cultivator with the consciousness burned out of it. And the spirit stone is what holds the soul in the shell. The instant I yanked the stone out, the soul evaporated. I had spent 15 minutes efficiently deleting the only valuable component of 6 extremely valuable artifacts 6 times, and then paid for them out of my own share. I shopped those husks around for 6 months. 6 months. Nobody wanted them. In the end, I dumped all 6 at the Baibao Pavilion for 3 mid-grade spirit stones and walked out with my ears hot. The manager there was the same old man who sold me my silver shadow years ago in the outer Sect market when I had nothing. He looked at my face for slightly too long when I came in, and I was too annoyed about the puppets to wonder why. I should have wondered why. 53 pill formulas is not 53 recipes. It is a ladder. I ran every one of them the same way. Cook it until the bar stops moving, then drop it and take the next rung. No sentiment, no favorites. 80 proficiency, 91, 99, and then a wall so hard it felt personal. So I swallowed the Mingshen pill. Alchemy, advanced, 0 out of 1,000, and my spiritual sense went up 50% in one afternoon, which is a sentence that does not convey what actually happened, so let me try again. I could suddenly feel the shape of things inside sealed containers across a room. I could taste the difference between 2 herbs picked 11 days apart, and I could finally refine gooey water pills, which is the entire reason I had been freezing in an underground river for 2 years. The spiritual sense jump loosened my cultivation too, because everything in a cultivator is connected to everything else, which nobody tells you and everybody discovers. 1 mid-grade spirit stone, 1 month of seclusion. Spirit origin, 9th layer, middle stage. I sat down afterward and did an honest audit on myself, and the numbers were absurd. Blood foundation doubled, from the fruit. Spiritual sense doubled, from becoming an advanced alchemist. Realm up 1 stage. Body, mind, and spirit, all 3 inside 8 months. Roughly twice as strong as I had been at the re-ranking. Against Chen Lihua, or Song Zhongyi, the first and second of Xuanshui Peak, I now put myself at 40 against 60. Losing odds. But odds. The year-end competition was 3 months out, and for the first time in my life, I caught myself actually wanting a fight. I am capable of 3rd, I wrote in my notes. I am going to fight for 1st. There was a line I remembered from a comic in my old life, from a world with no cultivation in it at all, and I wrote it under that. A truly strong man is not the one with the biggest attack. He is the one who wastes none of it. Then I ran into Shen Hongzhou outside the Internal Affairs Hall. He had made 8th layer late, which for him was an enormous year. And he had done it because of me, because he had been grinding in my image since that banquet. He came over grinning to compare notes. And then he stopped grinning. His family has a sense technique, a danger read, the kind of thing that tells a cultivator when to get out of a room. He told me years later what it did when he got within 10 feet of me. It went off harder than it had ever gone off in front of his own clan's 9th layer late elder. He kept his face perfectly still, made small talk, and quietly stopped competing with me that afternoon, and I noticed nothing at all. That person, he thought, may soon be on a completely different level from us. He did mention one thing, and it turned out to matter. Dean Mo, our old teacher from the 17th branch courtyard, was about to come out of a 2-year seclusion. Shen proposed the 4 of us should go and pay respects when he did. I said yes, absolutely, whenever he comes out. The Gui water pill formula cost 150,000 contribution points. That was every single point I had earned that entire year. I paid it, went home, opened the jade slip, read to the bottom of the requirements section, and put my head in my hands. A Gui water pill needs an artifact-grade pill furnace. An ordinary furnace leaks impurities out of its own walls into the mix, which is fine for a 100 herb pill and instantly fatal to anything that depends on elemental purity, and Gui water is nothing but purity. Xiaolei could forge one. Xiaolei was thrilled to be asked, and then Xiaolei told me what the 2 master materials cost. Red flame true gold and white porcelain 3 yin soil. 7 or 8 mid-grade spirit stones for the pair, which is 2 or 3,000 ordinary ones, and more importantly, neither of them is sitting in a shop. Post a bounty, he said. There are 100,000 outer sect disciples on this mountain, and every one of them is broke and knows somebody's grandmother with a box in her attic. That is genuinely how the economy of a great sect works, and I have never heard anyone say it out loud since. I posted the bounty, and then, standing in the doorway of the Internal Affairs Hall, waiting for the clerk to stamp it, something in my head came apart, because I had stood in that exact doorway 3 years earlier. Back then I ran errands for intersect seniors off that board. Fetch this, escort that, take the risk, take the pay. And I used to look up at the posting window and think, one day I am going to be the one who posts the mission, instead of the one who takes it. I was that man now. I was standing on the other side of the counter, and the clerk was being polite to me, and a couple of outer sect kids in the queue were looking at my robes the way I used to look at robes. And the switch flipped, and the question arrived, and it was not a small question. Why am I doing this at all? I was 9th layer middle. I could have walked down that mountain the next morning and been a king, founded a clan, owned a city, lived 80 years in silk with people bowing when I ate. Any mortal ruler in that entire province would have handed me a throne for the privilege of standing next to me. Instead, I lived in a cave, on a schedule, alone, doing repetitive work for 11 hours a day. So that in 40 years, I might be permitted to do harder repetitive work. Why live like a tool? That is a heart demon tribulation, and I did not know it while it was happening, and it nearly ate me right there in a doorway with people walking past. And it got worse, because the thing found the actual root and pulled it up. My famous perseverance was never a virtue, it was escape. I never accepted this world, not once. I never let a single person get close enough to notice. I buried the specific loneliness of a man who was dropped into a place that is not his, under so many training hours that I would not have to sit still long enough to feel it. Every drill was a way of not being here. People kept walking past me in that hall. Nobody looked. There was nobody on that mountain who could have helped me, and I would not have asked. And then I heard myself answer, why are there so many questions? I cultivate because I want to cultivate. I work because I refuse to be a frog at the bottom of a well in a world this bright and this wide. Since I exist here, this world truly exists. I want to stand taller. I want to see further. And one day, I want to touch the immortal. Something invisible snapped, cleanly, like a thread I had not known I was carrying. Nobody in that hall noticed a thing. The clerk stamped my bounty and asked if there would be anything else. A month later, the bounty got a taker, the Guo family. Once rich enough to have been building an alchemy furnace of their own, which tells you exactly how far they had come down. Because now, they were 1/7th layer elder and a house full of empty rooms, quietly selling off their ancestors' collection to keep the lights on. They had the red flame true gold, and they wanted something in exchange that was not money. I rode out to meet them, and on the road, I got to watch a small piece of family theater that I still think about. The old Guo patriarch had a grandson, Guo Tianyu, 6th layer, the family's future, spoiled to the marrow of his bones his entire life, by a man who was clearly incapable of telling him no. The boy looked me over the way a rich child looks at a delivery man, and the old man turned around and froze him with a single sentence, in a voice I had not heard him use before. He is only a few years older than you, he said, and he is from a different world than our Guo family. Bow your head, or you will regret it for the rest of your life." The deal itself was simple. A spirit valley had surfaced on their land, thick with chi, and 3 ninth-layer beasts had moved in and made it uninhabitable. Clear it, and the red flame, true gold, was mine. The 3 yin soil they did not have, but they had records of where it grows, which was worth almost as much. I said fine. I said I could handle 3 ninth layers. And Guo Tianyu could not help himself. "Anyone can talk big," he said. "If we fail, who takes responsibility?" Now, in a novel, this is the part where I swallow it. I smile. I take the insult. The reader grinds their teeth for 200 pages, and eventually, I explode in public and everyone claps. I have read that book. I have written a worse version of that book, and I was not going to spend 2 months of my life inside it. So I settled it in the courtyard, before dinner. "You are 6th layer," I said. "I will suppress myself to the 3rd and let you attack me. If you push me back half a step, I lose and I go home." His grandfather started to object, and I swept one palm and put a 7th layer elder gently out of the ring, and he stopped objecting. Then it was not even a fight, and I want to explain why. Because this is the single most useful thing I learned that entire year. I had spent a full month working on power control, not power, control. And with an advanced alchemist's spiritual sense, when Guo Tianyu threw a full-strength punch, I could see the whole thing. And what I saw was that only about 2 or 3/10 of it actually arrived at the target. The rest blew off sideways into the air like cotton candy in a wind, wasted, unfelt, gone. That is true of almost every cultivator alive. Nobody teaches it, nobody measures it, because nobody can. So I answered a 6th layer full power punch with one finger at 3rd layer power, and it popped like a soap bubble. He tried it again, same result. Then 100 more times, in a rising panic, with everything he had. And I stood in a 5-foot circle and let none of it touch me. "There is no such thing as sorcery," I told him, somewhere around move 60. "You are just too weak." When he was completely empty, I put one finger on his chest, and it was over. He was not injured. He fainted from overreaching, which happens to teenagers. And his grandfather, who had been expecting the worst, spent the rest of the evening being enormously grateful to me. And he was right to be. A pettier inner sect disciple would have quietly wrecked that boy's meridians in front of witnesses, and the Guo family could not have said one word about it, ever. The valley was a beautiful piece of ground. High walls, one entrance, spiritual chi thick enough to see, and it belonged to 3 ninth-layer Ren beasts who had carved it into thirds and lived in a stable, functioning peace. An iron-backed demon boar at 9th early peak, hide like a magic artifact, and it eats ore, deliberately, to harden itself. A red refined demon python at 9th middle, and a silver Luan mountain sparrow, also 9th middle, which owned the air. The Guo family fielded 100 men to help. Most of them were useless. I took them anyway, and I want to be honest about why, because it is not flattering. If it went wrong, 100 bodies between me and the entrance makes my own exit significantly more likely. I said that to myself in those words. I have not gotten better about it since. 2 days of picking off the minor beasts around the edges, which is how you start a war. You take away the buffer, and then the 3 of them have to look at each other. Then I sniped the boar from cover to kick it off. And instead of the 3 of them turning on each other, the boar's head came around and looked directly at my hiding place. The sparrow dropped out of the sun onto my head, and the python was already in the grass behind me. All 3, at once, from 3 directions. Coordinated. Every cultivator alive knows that Ren beasts at that realm have no real intelligence. That is not a theory. It is the first line of the first page of the first book on beasts. That was not a wild animal doing that. That was 3 wild animals being directed. By something. Behind the scenes. I did not have time to follow that thought, and I have never stopped following it since. I went for the fastest kill available, because a 3-way in an enclosed valley gets worse every second. Overturning C3-fold waves, and by then it was at major achievement, which means I no longer throw the 3 waves in sequence. I stack all 3 into one palm, and it comes down with a bite of genuine yellow rank power in it. And the boar threw itself into it, deliberately, sideways across the line, to eat the strike meant for the other 2. I want you to sit with that, because I had to. A 9th-layer beast performed a self-sacrifice to shield 2 other beasts of a different species. Most human cultivators I know would not do that for their own cousins. The boar went into the ground in a crater with its ribs broken, alive. I kicked the python's head into the dirt mid-lunge, and then I was in the air with an empty pair of meridians and nothing under my feet. And the sparrow came down out of the upper left, claws first, at a man with no ground and no essence, and the Xuanyuan armor ate it. I have worn that armor every day since I was 15. It is not good armor. My movement technique makes it, on paper, completely redundant, and I have been told so by people whose opinion I respect. I never took it off, because I am a coward about exactly one thing, which is dying to something I did not see. It cost me a fraction of my speed for 4 years, and it bought my life in 1/10 of a second. I hit the ground flat, unhurt, and came up out of the dust drawing. Sword drawing technique took the python's head clean off its body. And then, because the head was still falling and it was the only solid thing in the world, I put my foot on it and kicked off. Straight back up into the sky, and ran the sparrow through, and then its pupils went black, not dark, ink, like something poured. A bolt of black light came out of that bird and went into my forehead, and a voice arrived inside my own skull, calm and enormously pleased with itself. "Kid," it said, "your body belongs to me from this day forward." Possession. The one thing on the entire list I had no counter for. No technique, no artifact, no plan. I had thought about it exactly twice in 4 years, and both times filed it under things that will simply kill me. And it failed instantly, not because I resisted, because of what possession actually is. Possession works by drowning. The invader floods the host with their own self. 300 years of memory and identity poured into a container holding 20. And the host's sense of who they are simply dissolves under the volume of it. Which means the very first thing the invader does is open my memory and look inside. And she walked into the head of a man from 21st century Earth, 300 years of a cultivator who spent most of it sitting in a cave, against one ordinary modern lifetime. Not a wise lifetime, not a genius. Just a man who had watched thousands of hours of film, read hundreds of novels, sat through 9 years of compulsory schooling, and several more after that, and who used words like time and light and space and reincarnation and chaos as casual furniture in ordinary sentences. She caught one ray of it. I heard her scream. Inside my own head, I heard the exact moment it went wrong. What kind of terrifying being is this? And then, with real fury, I refused to accept this. And then my spiritual sense, which is that of an advanced alchemist, closed on what was left of her and ate it. When I came down out of the sky, my hair had gone white. It grew back. It took 4 months. I read her while I digested her, which is a sentence I am not proud of. Her name was She Mingyue, True Essence, 3rd Layer, a disciple of the beast-taming sect, from a continent I have never seen. 300 years ago, she chased an enemy across the sea into Fan Continent, dug herself a temporary cave in that valley, and walked directly into the Great Cultivation World War without knowing it had started. Her blood-packed beasts all died. She self-destructed her own body to escape and got out as a single wisp of soul. And that wisp slept under the valley for 3 centuries, until an earthquake 10 years ago shook it awake. She could not make a body, so she took 3 beasts instead, bound them, made them guard her, and rode inside the sparrow's sea of consciousness, waiting for something worth stealing to walk into the valley. I was simply the first one that did. Her cave gave up a few hundred spirit stones, some true essence-grade pills, and the beast-taming technique, which is a complete legacy in itself, and which she had presumably intended to use again. And then, in a crack in the rock, underneath a pile of jade slips she had clearly not thought worth organizing, there was one more thing. A fragment. The first chapter of a book, and only the first chapter. The Taiyi soul refining technique. No grade on it, no school seal, nothing to tell me what it was. Here is what I did know. Xie Mingyue had been written off by her own sect. Everyone had agreed she would never break into the true essence realm. And she did it at nearly 100 years old, and this is what she did it with. And after her body was destroyed, one wisp of her soul stayed intact, outside a body, without a vessel, for 300 years. That is not a technique, that is a category error. I took the crippled sparrow as a blood-bound beast with the spirit beast bag out of her own cave, which gave me a flying mount. And I want to note that a flying mount at 9th layer is the kind of thing families go to war over. Her greed is the only reason I have any of this. If she had simply killed me, she would still be sitting in that valley. I gave the valley back, and the Guo family lost its collective mind. They locked Guo Tianyu in confinement for 3 years, which I did not ask for, and then several dozen of them came out with buckets and started scraping the soaked dirt off the valley floor, because 9th layer beast blood is a treasure to a family in that condition, and there were 3 of them dead on the ground. And then, while I was reading their records to find the 3 yin soil, the loop closed on itself, and I sat down. 300 years ago, Xie Mingyue, an outsider who did not know whose land she was standing on, raided the Guo family. She did it while both of the Guo family's true essence realm elders were away at the front, which got her identified as a Hanhai spy and hunted across the province, which is what forced her self-destruct in the first place. And it is also why the Guo family fell, because both of those elders then died in that war and never came home. 3 centuries later, her waking up is what brought me down to fix her descendants' problem. Karma. Tidy enough that I did not enjoy it. And walking back through the white jade gate of the Sect that night, the actual realization landed, and it was cold. 300 years ago. The Great War. Every single thing I owned came out of that war's corpses. The alchemist's ruin Zhou Qinghai found. Xie Mingyue's cave. The Guo family's hoard. The water sword immortal's entire legend. The one every child on this mountain is raised on. 5 dead true essence realm cultivators inside the small circle of 1/9 layer nobody's personal luck. 5. That is not luck. That is a battlefield I happen to be standing on top of, 3 centuries later, picking things up. And the truce with the Hanhai sect was never a treaty. Nobody signed anything. They simply both ran out of blood at the same time. And the border has been a grinder ever since, and any Hanhai disciple met in the open is killed on sight by either side without a word exchanged. If that war starts again, Spirit Origin Realm is not a participant. Spirit Origin Realm is the material. All I can do is get stronger. So I got stronger. Beast taming technique to minor achievement in a month. Because the panel makes learning anything roughly twice as fast as it should be, and because I had a live subject. The sparrow flies faster than I can run. Nothing below the true essence realm can catch me now, in the open, in any direction. That single fact changed how I planned every trip I took for the next 4 years. I fed it healing pills to fix the hole I had put through it, and it liked the taste. And that is how I acquired a permanent problem. That bird once ate itself nearly to death on a bag of pills I left out. Now it is on a strict daily ration, and every single morning it lands next to me and stares at the side of my head until I hand one over. And the moment it has swallowed it, it takes off and leaves. Every morning. Eat, then run away. I have a flying mount of extraordinary rarity, and our entire relationship is a vending machine. And then I tried the Taiyi soul refining technique, and it broke me. A full month of daily work on a technique I could not get to beginner, and worse, the panel would not display it at all. No bar, no number, blank. It just refused. Nothing in 4 years had refused before. The only thing I got out of that month was that my control over my own spiritual sense kept climbing anyway, quietly, like a side effect. And I hung on to that fact because it was the only evidence I had that the month was not wasted. The 3 yin soil sits on a cliff, and the records said the guardian was a 300-year-old scorpion. Those records were out of date. What was actually living there was a white-headed spider at 9th layer late peak, sitting over a sea of webbing that filled a canyon. And the webbing was full of its children. I need you to understand something about me. In my previous life, I once kicked a mad dog down a street, and I have also, in the same life, jumped backwards into a wall because of a spider the size of a fingernail. And I did not enjoy 1 second of this job. I burned the webs first, which was easy, because spider silk turns out to be superb fuel, and I got a fire going in that canyon that you could probably see from the city. Then I used overturning sea as a decoy, threw it wide, deliberately. So the boss dodged upward, because a spider that dodges into the air has nothing to push off and cannot change direction. And I killed it with the chi-breaking needle through the eye. That needle is a nothing technique. It costs almost no essence, and it does almost no damage, and everyone drops it by the 3rd layer. What it does is go in a very small hole, and by then my spiritual sense was fine enough to suppress the needle's own spirit fluctuation, until it was 3 feet from the target, which means the thing never saw it coming. 2 years of alchemy, spent on making a beginner's needle invisible. I got the white porcelain 3 yin soil out of the cliff face under the nest, and on the road home, 2 men jumped me. Bandit cultivators, notorious ones, a 9th late and a 9th perfection working as a pair. And they had clearly been doing this for a long time. They lost. And then, going through their pouches, I found nothing. Not one thing worth carrying. 2 career criminals with a combined age of about 90, and their entire net worth would not have covered a decent dinner. So I bagged the corpses. I walked into the city lord's hall of the nearest city with 2 dead men over my shoulder and cashed them in on the public bounty board for 2,000 spirit stones a head. The receptionist did not sneer at me. She did not look me up and down and ask if I was sure. She just checked the faces against the board, filled out the form, and paid me. I mention this because in a novel there would have been a sneering receptionist. There is always a sneering receptionist. In real life, people mostly just want to finish their shift. That fight cracked something. 10 days in seclusion afterwards, and the panel finally, grudgingly, printed a line it had been refusing to print for a month. Secret technique. Taiyi soul refining technique, fragment. Beginner. 0 out of 10. And the world changed resolution. That is the only way I can say it. Everything I had been looking at for 4 years went from ordinary picture to high definition, all at once, permanently. The grain of the wood in my own door. The individual layers of chi in a spirit stone. The exact moment a pill's structure decides whether it is going to hold, and every single skill I owned sharpened in the same hour, because they all run through spiritual sense: alchemy, object manipulation, beast taming, water control especially, because I have water intent and water attribute spirit essence, and now the sense to move it precisely. That combination meant I could hit as hard with raw manipulated water, with no martial skill involved at all, as a 9th layer early hits with his best move. I have a weapon that costs nothing, is always available, and does not show up in anybody's records. Xiao Lei took the 2 master materials off me and got genuinely excited, because with those he could push my furnace past ordinary artifact grade to intermediate, and he asked for a favor in exchange. Escort him into the deep Xuanshui Dark River. He is a fire cultivator. Down there he runs at about 60%, and he knows it. I also put in an order with him for more chi-breaking needles, made out of the spider boss's fangs and its venom sacs, because I had just learned what a small, sharp thing is worth. The square was loud that year, and all of it was about people I would never meet. Half of the 10 talents had already broken into the true essence realm. Bing Yu Yao had been taken as a quasi-personal disciple by a peak master, which is a career finished at 19. And Guan Feng Lie, freshly into true essence 1st layer, had been leaned on by a true essence 2nd layer senior who thought a new arrival needed teaching. He beat him. Then he held off a 3rd layer who came to settle it. And then he announced, publicly, that in 10 years he would challenge a personal disciple. Somebody near me said, living in the same era as these people is a nightmare for the rest of us. And then, across that square, 3 of my own classmates started talking about which one of us might one day sit at that table. They said my name. They did not know I could hear it. My spiritual sense picks up a conversation at 40 meters through a crowd now, so I stood with my back to them and listened to people I barely knew put me in a sentence with the 10 talents, and I felt precisely nothing about it. I had already moved on to the only name still open on my list, Wei Kung Rei, twice now, each time closer. Things should not happen more than 3 times. The 3rd time is when I beat him. I know, I told you that account had closed itself. It had. It absolutely had. And I still could not stop writing his name in the margin. And if you think that is inconsistent, congratulations, you have met a person. Song Mingxuan announced the year's prize on the 1st morning. 1st place learns any yellow rank skill of his, personally, from him, not buys, learns, from a true disciple. Mo Zixuan had spent the entire year preparing for me. I found this out afterward, and it made me feel worse than losing would have. He had ground himself to 9th layer late peak, and bought a completely new movement art specifically to answer mine. And he had worked out that beating me would break the heart demon he had been carrying since I put a sword to his throat, and that breaking it would carry him straight into perfection. He stood up to issue the challenge, and I was already walking. I went past him, past the entire middle of that board, all the way to the front, and I bowed. I am Chen Xuanyi, I said, and I challenge senior brother Chen Lihua, rank 9 to rank 1, 8 places in 1 jump. Against a 9th layer, perfection who had held that top slot for 2 years. Chen Lihua did not laugh. He was too good for that. He simply looked offended, in a quiet way, and opened with his killing move. Chen Lihua owned exactly 1 artifact, a saber, plain, not a single special property on it, no formation, no spirit, nothing engraved. Supremely hard and absolutely nothing else, because he had poured his entire self into the blade instead of buying qualities for it. And he had saber intent, thunder attuned, which is a thing you get by doing 1 motion for 10 years until the sky agrees with you. We went 137 exchanges in about a quarter of an hour. I cannot give you a play-by-play because there was not one. Both of us were moving past what the eye in that square could follow, and neither of us used a single technique that required charging, because there was no time to charge anything. Fastest plain strikes only. Draw, cut, block, step. 137 times. And when our intents met head-on, the sky over that square split into 2 halves for about a second, and the entire front row went flat on the stones. Mo Zixuan watched that from the side and quietly gave up on the year, he told me later. A full year of work, he said, and the gap had gotten wider, not smaller. Up on the platform, Song Mingxuan was watching something else entirely, and this is the part that matters. My attacks were landing at about 70% of Chen Lihua's raw power, 70, and we were dead even, because I had been training power control for a year, and power control is a discipline that officially belongs to the true essence realm, and most true essence cultivators never bother with it at all, because why would you when you can simply have more power instead? Song Mingxuan's exact thought, which he repeated to somebody who repeated it to me. He should not have had anyone guiding him in this. Interesting. Then Chen Lihua called it, out loud, mid-fight, like a man closing a shop. 137 moves, he said. Neither of us has gained a hair. Settle it in one. The sky over the square went black. He pulled real lightning down into that plain saber. Thunderous 9 heavens, near enough to yellow rank that the distinction stopped being interesting, and the air went dry and my teeth hurt. I answered with overturning sea, 3-fold waves at major achievement. All 3 waves. Everything. For about 2 seconds, that plaza was an ocean. Songming Xuan stood up on the platform, ready to save both of us, which I did not see and would not have appreciated. When the water came down, there was a crater, with Chen Lihua lying in the middle of it, and his saber lying dead beside him. And there was me, on one knee, wrecked, leaning on the silver shadow with both hands, upright. Rank 1. Song Zhongyi, who had been second for 2 years, did not challenge me. He went and challenged Chen Lihua instead, and lost to him again, which I thought was the most honest thing anyone did all week. Guo Shifeng's jealousy finally died. I could see it happen from across the square. When a gap gets big enough, there is nothing left to feel except looking up, and looking up is restful. Zhou Qinghai was in seclusion and sent congratulations by talisman and, I found out, went straight back into his training room without answering 3 other letters. Song Ming Xuan's prize, chosen by him, not by me, the 9 Dragons' mysterious water shield. Near yellow rank, water attribute, and it does not attack. It traps. He picked it deliberately, and when I opened it, I understood, and it was the most useful gift anyone has ever given me. Between the sword, the palm, the fist, and the needle, I could kill almost anything I could reach. I had no way at all to make something stay where it was. And then he told the room what next year is, year 3. All the peaks send their new inner disciples to one grand competition, everybody against everybody, once. And the top 10 of that competition each receive a Ningjin pill. The Ningjin pill cannot be bought. There is no price. It is assembled from 8 main materials, and if you cannot assemble all 8 yourself, you do not get one. And without one, your odds of breaking into the true essence realm drop through the floor. I already had 2 of the 8, 3 colored Ling Ji, Flood Dragon Ginseng. I wrote the other 6 down that night, and I did not sleep much. Prize money converts into cultivation at a very poor exchange rate, and I did not care. Roughly 10 mid-grade spirit stones, burned to ash in 2 months, and out the other side came Spirit Origin 9th layer late stage, which roughly doubled my combat power again. Then the pill furnace arrived, and Xiaolei had done what he said he would do, and then some. First batch of advanced grade pills succeeded on attempt 1, which never happens, and then the entire alchemy line paid off at once, 4 years late, exactly as designed. I could finally make Gui water pills, out of my own centrifuged essence, in my own furnace. 1 Gui water pill is worth about half a month of hard training, and because it is pure water essence going into a pure water technique, it does not just add cultivation, it cleans the technique while it works. Every pill I ate made the next one work better. I sealed myself in the dark river for half a year. 9th layer late peak. 1 step from perfection. I also learned the 9 Dragons' mysterious water shield down there. The first time I cast it, I nearly brought the ceiling of the cave down on my own head, which I am told is normal for near yellow rank spells, and which did not feel normal at the time. And somewhere in the middle of that half year, the Huainan Chen family held another elder meeting about me, and got precisely nowhere. The problem they had run into was arithmetic. A number of the elders sitting in that hall arguing about how to bring the boy home were now, individually, weaker than the boy. Let nature take its course, the old patriarch said, and put his pipe back in his mouth, and that was the meeting. I owed Xiaolei for the furnace, and Xiaolei came to collect in the politest possible way, which is to say, he brought a map. He wanted an escort, outside the Sect's protective array, into the open underground water realm. Here's what I did not know until that week, and what most inner disciples never learn, because nobody advertises it. The Xuanshui Dark River has 3 levels. The first is open to Spirit Origin Realm. The second is True Essence Realm only, and the third may only be entered by cultivators of the Dongzhen Realm, which is the realm above True Essence, which is the realm that produces the people whose portraits you cannot look at directly. There is a 3rd level of a river under my own mountain that immortals need permission to enter, and here is the practical half of it. Everything inside the Sect's array has been stripped bare for 1,000 years. Every resource, every herb, every ore. If you want anything at all, you go outside the array, which is where the beasts are. We found the beasts, and we also found an idiot. Ren Jun, 9th late, leading a string of Ren family juniors on a training trip, preening the entire time, explaining the local ecology to people who had not asked. He was being run down by a ninth-layer perfection beast that had absolutely no business being that close to the shallows. I killed it with one cast of 9 dragons, which is what that spell is for, and Renjun immediately began calling me senior brother in a voice you could have sold as honey. But his report was worth the trouble. For about a year, he said, the beasts of the underground water realm have been getting more irritable and leaving their own territories. Everyone in the family talks about it. He had gambled that the perimeter would still be safe. The perimeter was not safe. And at the back of his group, keeping his face turned away, was a young man I recognized at 200 meters, Ren Chang. I beat him 3 years earlier in the 17th courtyard, in front of everybody. And he had watched me climb ever since, and had told anyone who would listen that one day he would trample me under his foot. He was 8th layer middle now, and top of the 17th courtyard, which is a genuine achievement. And I want that on the record because he earned it. And he had just watched me kill a 9th layer perfection with one hand. His grudge died right there, quietly, without either of us saying a word about it. I felt nothing. That is the honest part. Not triumph, not pity, nothing at all. It is like running into the man who mocked you when you were poor, years after you got rich, and discovering that you have to work quite hard to remember why it mattered. The difference between levels is not a gap, it is 2 different worlds. The best answer available is silence, and I gave him that, and I think he was grateful. It got worse the deeper we went. 3 9th-layer middle beasts attacked us together, in open water, with nothing behind them to guard. That is the tell. A Ren beast that attacks with nothing to protect has left its nest. And a whole realm's worth of beasts leaving their nests at once has exactly one name, and every cultivator alive knows it. Beast Tide. Law enforcement patrols kept sweeping past us in formation, ordering everyone out, and every one of those patrols was heading toward the abyss. I watched 4 of them go in over 2 days. I did not see one come back. I told Xiao Lei we were leaving. He asked for 2 more days. I said no. And then he told me the truth, which he should have led with. 1,000-year green water blue lotus, planted here deliberately, centuries ago, by a true essence senior who was nursing a damaged specimen back to health. Hidden under a concealment array on the shallow rim, on purpose, precisely because no true essence cultivator in history has ever wasted an afternoon searching the shallow rim. And he offered me the entire lotus. All of it. He only wanted the leaves for refining. 1 seed off that plant is enough to push a 9th-layer late peak into perfection, which is exactly what I needed before the grand competition, and exactly what I had no legal way to obtain. And I broke my own rule for the first time in 4 years, consciously, with my eyes open. Endless caution means you never reach the peak. Look at who is actually standing at the top of this world. Are all of them cunning sages who never gambled? Because I have read their biographies, and they are not. This risk, I said, is worth taking. 4 days of searching a lake bed inch by inch, which is exactly as tedious as it sounds. And then my spiritual sense caught something behind a boulder that no eye would have read as anything. A crack, a passage. Behind it, a hidden underground lake with its own sky of glowing stone. And in the middle of it, on a black island, 1 plain blue lotus with dead brown petals. And around that lotus, for several feet in every direction, nothing else grew. Not a weed, not a moss. The rock was bare in a perfect circle, because everything that had ever tried to grow near it had been drunk dry. Like an emperor among plants, Xiao Lei said, and he was not being poetic, he was being technical. Then the lake bed stood up. A thorn serpent plant demon at half-step true origin realm. And what that looks like is the entire floor of a cavern standing up into the air as 10,000 vines. Every single one tipped with a snake's head. All of them regenerating faster than I could cut them. I cut for about 90 seconds and made no progress whatsoever. Xiao Lei saved us, and he saved us because he is an artifact refiner, which means he has spent his career reading material catalogs, which means he had seen this thing written down. The root, he shouted. It is all one plant. Kill the root. I took a half-step realm strike head-on to buy the position, which hurt in a way I have not forgotten, and answered with 9 dragons, and blew the entire rock chamber apart. The true body was under the island, and when the roof came off the cavern I found it. And I put a perfect sword drawing technique down the middle of it, and split it in half. And while several thousand tons of ceiling were coming down on us, Xiao Lei dove sideways off the rocks to catch something falling out of the wreck. A token. And a voice spoke, and it did not speak to me, and it did not come out of the air. It came out of the ring on Xiao Lei's finger. That is it, the voice said, old and dry and enormously satisfied. The true disciple token of the Taiyi sect, one of the 8 great sects. Then, in a completely different tone, like a man remembering his manners, go and check on your friend. That kid is not bad. He might become an asset to you one day. Xiao Lei has a master living in his ring. I did not say a word about it, then or since or now, Because I am a man from another world, walking around with a panel in his head that tells him the exact proficiency of everything he has ever learned. And if I start demanding that other people explain their impossible things, someone is eventually going to ask me to explain mine. Everybody has one. That is the entire social contract of the cultivation world. But I filed the word. Taiyi Sect. Taiyi soul refining technique. That is twice now, from two completely unconnected directions, and I did not like it. We had not even lifted the lotus out of the ground when the law enforcement search party came through the crack. 5 of them. Deacon Yuan Zhen in front, white robes, half-step true origin realm. He looked at us. Then he looked past us at a 1,000-year green water blue lotus sitting in a bare circle of rock. And I watched a man's entire face change while he stood still. That lotus was worth 3 or 4 Ningzhen pills, which meant it was worth his own breakthrough into the true essence realm. Which meant that a half-step deacon, who had gone as far as he was ever going to go, was suddenly looking at the rest of his life lying on a rock in front of him. "Get out," he said. "Now. Leave everything where it is." And one of his men, who had clearly done this before, supplied the paperwork out loud. "They disobeyed the sect's emergency recall," he said, "during a beast tide. They must be Hanhai sect spies." Yuan Zhen's eyes lit up when he heard it, because a spy label is the one accusation nobody investigates. Xiaolei started to reason with him. He got about 4 words out. 2 men came forward with chains. "Now, I have been the sensible one for this entire story. I want you to understand that I did the arithmetic first, quickly, the way I always do. If we let ourselves be taken, if we go to the law enforcement hall as accused spies, on his home ground, with a half-step deacon who needs us silent and has already got the paperwork phrased, there is no version of that where we walk out." So I said to myself, in my own head, in words, "Screw reason." And I swatted both of them into the rock wall with one palm before anyone in that cave had finished moving. Yuan Zhen's mask came off with it, and what was underneath was not just greed, and that surprised me. Ever since that arrogant Guan Fengli beat a senior, he said, "You new disciples all think you are the protagonists of a cultivation novel," which, honestly, is the single most accurate thing anyone said to me that decade. Then he opened with his signature, Flying Great Capture Hand, Minor Achievement, and I met it with Overturning C, and we went dead even, and something in my chest came loose. 2 years of swallowing it, 2 years of walking away from things, calculating, being the reasonable one, choosing the safe exit every single time. I felt my 9th late peak bottleneck start to give while I was standing in it. Yuan Zhen and I traded bare fists after that. No techniques, no artifacts, just 2 men hitting each other, and it tied. And I watched him fail to process it, out loud, because half-step realm cultivators do not have to be good at hiding things. "Does this kid at 9th late peak," he said, "already have the power of a half-step true origin realm?" And then he decided to kill me, and he said that out loud too. If he escapes today and grows, I am finished. He was right. And I want to be clear about what my actual plan was, because it was not to win a fight. My plan was to make it loud. A new inner disciple, beating a half-step law enforcement deacon, is a scandal too enormous to file quietly. And a scandal was the only mechanism in existence that got his conduct into daylight, instead of getting my body into a report. I was not fighting for my life. I was fighting for witnesses. 100 exchanges in, and I want to describe what was happening to him, because I've never seen it on anybody's face since. He was not winning, and I was not fading. I was getting stronger, mid-fight, exchange by exchange. And I know exactly why, because I could feel it happening. Under the pressure of a half-step realm, every separate advantage I had spent 4 years building finally fused. Spiritual sense, perfect basics, the absurdly pure essence that Yiyuan Guishui gives you in exchange for taking twice as long as everybody else. Water intent, power control. 5 separate things I had been carrying in 5 separate pockets, and a man trying to kill me hammered them into one piece. Like iron under a flame losing its impurities and becoming steel. Also, I was underwater, which is my ground, and he had followed me into it, which was his mistake and not mine. So he called out his life-bound treasure, a mountain-shaking bell. That is a true essence tier trick, nurtured in his own Dantian for years, and it is supposed to flatten anything below true essence realm outright. I hit it with 9 dragons and threw it back cracked, and the recoil went into his soul. Then I drew. He twisted away from the sword-drawing technique, and mostly succeeded, and it took his left arm off at the shoulder. "You little beast," he said, holding what was left. "I will remember this humiliation." And he ran. His own men looked at each other and backed away, and then ran too, in 3 different directions, and I let all of them go. I was empty. I was swaying. My face was the color of the rock. I could not have fought a second round with a healthy 4th-layer disciple. I got out of there as fast as a man can move while pretending he is not running. In a cave 2 islands away, I swallowed 1 green water blue lotus seed, and the bottleneck went like a rotten door. Spirit origin, 9th level, perfection. Xiao Lei sat across from me while I came out of it and told me what I had actually done, in a slightly stunned voice. At 9th late, he said, you beat a half-step true origin realm. Alone. That is not a rumor that stays in this province. That will make your name in the whole inner sect. And then, while I was still sitting on the floor, the old man in Xiao Lei's ancestral ring spoke for the 2nd time. And he spoke about me, and I found out later that it was the first time in his entire long life that he had praised anybody. He had dismissed Guan Fenglie in 1 sentence. He had described the Water Sword Immortal, the founding legend of my entire sect, as a somewhat interesting junior. And what he said about me was this. In Cultivation, he said, rigidity breaks. Geniuses who burn too bright are ruined by their first real failure. But the overcautious, the ones who dodge every challenge in order to live longer, never reach the peak at all. When I first saw this boy, he was rational and careful with his life and had no edge, so I thought little of him. If he had let that scum bully him, he would have been just another mediocre man with good habits. I never expected he would actually swing. He has judgment and the sharp edge of youthful courage. That is the thing every single person who has ever reached the summit had. The spirit must never be extinguished. I was famous inside a week. A new inner disciple who fought a law enforcement deacon and won, and the whole mountain split down the middle about it. Half of them said, fearless prodigy. The other half said, insubordinate lunatic who needs to be made an example of. Song Ming Xuan delivered the verdict himself, and he was furious with me. And worse than furious, he was disappointed, which I had not expected to mind as much as I did. The investigation confirmed everything. Yuan Zhen had acted out of pure greed. They also turned up a history of him abusing his post going back years. He was arrested and imprisoned. And I was punished anyway, for defying an emergency recall, and for striking a law enforcement officer of the sect. My 3-year newcomer benefits were terminated early, and I was exiled to the South Sea frontier for 10 years, to develop territory for the sect, barred from returning before the term was up. I said something. I do not remember what. Song Ming Xuan said the rest of it very quietly. The sect wanted the East Sea front, he said, against the Hanhai sect, for 20 years. I argued you down to this. These are the best terms that existed. And then, colder, if you would let them take you in, I would have come, and I would have proved your innocence, and Yuan Zhen would have been arrested anyway. You brought this on yourself. Pack, you have 10 days. And then, at the door, without turning around, he gave me one thing, and I did not understand its value for another decade. The man now running the South Sea expansion, he said, is Lingbo Zhenren, my own master. The man who chose you for Xuanshui Peak in the first place. Go and see him on Tianan Island. And here is what the exile actually cost. And it was not the 10 years. Leaving in a month meant I would miss the All Peaks New Disciple competition, the Ningzhen pill. The one thing I had been aiming at for a solid year, the pill that cannot be bought at any price, and I was going into that competition at 9th perfection, which meant I was not hoping for a top 10. I was near certain of it. I had 4 of the 8 materials in a box in my cave, and now I was never going to need them. I want to tell you what I thought about it, because I have had 10 years to lie about it, and I am not going to. So what if I missed it? If you gave me that cave and that deacon and that lotus again, I would still beat that man into the rock. And then, once I had stopped being angry, I turned the thing over and looked at the other side. And the other side was very good. The South Sea is undeveloped. That is the entire complaint about it. Nobody has picked it clean, which means its wilds are still full of exactly the kind of material a Ningzhen pill is made of. And nobody is standing in a queue for any of it. Stability is safe. Stability had also, quietly, been limiting me for 2 years, and it took a corrupt deacon and a formal sentence for me to notice. If an eagle wants the 9 heavens, it has to meet the wind first. I have the strength to protect myself now. It is time to see this world. Everyone else disagreed, publicly, at length. The consensus around the mountain was that I was finished, a shooting star burning itself out over a wasteland. 10 years in a swamp with no resources, no teachers, no competition, and if he even comes home at all, he will come home as an ordinary man. 3 people came to see me off: Shen Hongzhou, Zhou Qinghai, Xiao Lei. And Xiao Lei, who had a master in a ring and access to gossip I did not, told me on the dock why it had actually happened. And it had almost nothing to do with me. The sect has 2 factions, not officially. Nobody registers. The conservatives believe you file the edges off the young, make them weigh consequences, make them cautious, and most of them will survive long enough to become strong. The radicals believe a cultivator without an indomitable spirit is already dead, and that the ones who die on the way simply lack the talent to live. The radicals collapsed 3 centuries ago, and with nobody to argue against, the conservative position curdled the way every unopposed position curdles, until it was mostly senior disciples bullying junior disciples and calling it tempering. And then 3 years ago, Guan Fenglie broke a senior's face over exactly that, in public, and won. And the radical position came back from the dead overnight, which meant the conservatives urgently needed a public example to break the momentum. And a new inner disciple punched a law enforcement deacon at precisely the wrong month of precisely the wrong year. I was not sentenced, I was scheduling. And here is where I landed on it, and I have not moved since. It all stems from my own lack of strength. The radicals kept Guan Fenglie and threw me away, because he is a 10 talent, and I am not. The conservatives kick me to the border to make a point, because a point needs a small enough man to make it on. Nobody in that argument was for or against me. I was a unit of currency. I will reach the true essence realm within 10 years. Also, and I only worked this out on the boat, Song Mingxuan's coldness was probably not disappointment at all. It was probably conservative loyalty, and he had already spent whatever he had to spend to get me 20 years reduced to 10. I did not thank him. It did not occur to me until much later, which is a thing I think about. There was one more scene in that story, and I was not in it. Yuan Zhen went to the frozen prison. And I need you to understand what that place is, because 20 years there is not 20 years of sitting. You cannot meditate in the frozen prison, and staying warm burns the spirit essence you cannot replace, every hour, for as long as you are in there. 20 years means you walk out a cripple. Everyone knows it going in. That is the point of it. He had one visitor, his half-brother Yuan Shao, who had just made the true essence realm. Kill that little beast, Yuan Zhen said through the ice, and the thing is yours. Yuan Shao refused, flatly. He had a career, he had just broken through, and murdering an inner sect disciple over a family grudge is how promising men end. And then he remembered what the thing actually was, because the thing is what had carried his useless brother all the way to half-step in the first place. And if it could do that for Yuan Zhen, then in his hands it would do considerably more. So he came back and swore a heavenly Tao oath, which is not a promise, it is a contract with the sky that kills you if you break it. And the instant the visit ended, and the guards had walked away, Yuan Zhen shattered his own dantian and killed himself on the floor of his cell rather than serve 1 day of the 20. Laughing, Chen Chuanyi, he said, I will be waiting for you downstairs. Tianan City is what a great sect's colonial capital looks like, which is to say it is a boomtown with better architecture. My posting was the Yuelien archipelago, several hundred miles further out, which the clerk pronounced with the particular flatness of a man reading a place he has never been and never intends to go. Duties for 10 years, clear the beasts, break the bandits, keep the residents alive, keep the monthly resource output up. If output falls, punishment. If residents die, punishment. If it grows, bonus. 500 spirit stones a year. Lingbo Zhenren, the one man in the South Sea I had been told to find, was off traveling and would not be back for a year or 2. I bribed a clerk to make sure a message reached him whenever he did. And then I did the thing that I think is the actual reason I am still alive, and it is not glamorous. I had a 3-month grace period before I had to take up the post. I did not rush out to my island. All 3 months went into preparation. I bought a magic boat and a set of formation plates, and learned to actually operate both of them, badly at first, in a harbor, in front of people. I went to the market every single day and did nothing but listen to gossip, until I knew which sea lanes had pirates on them, and which families were feuding, and what the going rate for a corpse was. And I spent serious time refining Dean Mo's old jade talisman. He gave me that talisman years ago as a parting gift when I left the Outer Sect courtyard, and inside it is a sealed True Essence Realm attack, and it had been sitting in my pouch the entire time as a nice thought. A sealed attack you cannot trigger in one breath is a decoration. I worked on it until I could fire it between one heartbeat and the next. Then I boarded a merchant ship as a nondescript 9th layer middle nobody, in plain clothes, with my aura suppressed, and sat in a cheap cabin. The ship's steward looked me over on the gangplank and made his assessment, and I heard him make it to a colleague about 4 feet from my elbow. Another greenhorn who has read too many novels, he said, coming out to the South Sea alone to get rich. He will be at the bottom of the sea inside a week. Then he went and fawned over a swaggering 9th late passenger for the rest of the afternoon. I want to be fair to that steward. Statistically, he was correct. They hit us on the 3rd night. Cho Tiagan, who calls himself Black King Kong, 9th layer perfection, with a demon subduing staff and 16 men, against a merchant ship belonging to a trader everyone called Old Ghost Tang. I stayed in my cabin at first, and I want to be honest about why. Not strategy. I was busy. Because while the deck above me was filling up with screaming, something out there in the dark was watching me. Not the ship, me. I could feel it the way you feel a draft. Then a level 8 pirate kicked my cabin door in and swung a hatchet at my head, and I swatted him through the wall without standing up. The entire cabin turned around. After that, there was no point pretending, so I went up on deck and went through them like a machine. 2 ninth early at once, first, and it was almost boring, because I could see the shape of what they were throwing. 30, maybe 40% of their strength was actually arriving. The rest was noise. Once you can see that, a 9th early is not a threat. He is a man wasting most of his own effort in front of you. Then the rest, one after another, in a line. And the whole thing became a series of small flashes of movement with a corpse at the end of each one. The steward spent all of it wedged into a corner of the stairwell, watching the greenhorn he had written off 2 days earlier. And he told me afterward that he had wanted very badly to crawl into a barrel. Joe T-Gon finally came down out of the rigging and threw his signature staff through the deck at me, a strike that had apparently killed a lot of people. And I caught it. Peacock grabs its tail. The basic boxing, the free stuff. His staff went into a vortex, turned around inside it, and came back out at him several times harder than it went in. It took his arm off, and he went over the side and into the water, and away. Nobody on that ship had ever seen an attack return to its owner. Half of them did not believe it while it was happening in front of them. One of the sailors asked me, very seriously, whether it was a talisman. I was still being thanked when the sky came apart. One sword, falling out of the dark. And it very nearly cut a merchant ship in half lengthwise, and anyone standing in the light of it was simply not there afterward. I did not posture. I did not say anything clever. I whistled the silver Luan mountain sparrow out of its bag, got on it, and ran. The methods of the beast-taming sect, said a voice above me, sounding delighted. This trip is going to be profitable. He caught me on a reef about 2 miles out and introduced himself properly, which killers of that class always do. Yuan Shao, Yuan Zhen's brother, true essence realm, here to keep an oath. The pirates, he explained, had been his cover. A merchant ship goes down, everyone dies, nobody investigates. Very clean. And then I had gone and killed all 16 of them myself, which meant he had to come out and do it in the open like a common murderer, and he seemed genuinely annoyed about the inconvenience. And then we had the argument, and it is the only argument I have ever had that I still replay. I was furious, properly furious, not the calculating kind. His fate was his own doing, I said. He coveted my treasure. He framed me as an enemy spy in front of witnesses. He tried to kill me, and I took his arm as the price of it. The 20 years were not mine. They were the law enforcement Hall's, for his crimes, which they investigated and confirmed. Is there no justice in this world? And Yuan Shao, standing on a rock with his hands behind his back, was bored by the question. In this world, he said, the strong are the law. Because I am stronger than you, what I say is true. If I say you are the one who ruined my brother, then you are the one who ruined my brother. If I want you dead, you die. He was not being cruel. That is the part that stayed with me. He was explaining the weather. Then he opened, and the Xuanyuan armor saved my life for the 2nd time in 3 years. And the moment I could move, I went straight down into the sea. Because the ocean is mine. Water. Intent over 100 feet of dark water is not a buff. It is a nervous system. Down there, I do not detect things. I feel them arrive. He came after me, which was the only mistake he made, and unloaded a technique called Sword Suppresses All Directions, which is 8 blades at once from 8 angles. I slipped 6 on wind and cloud formless body. I canceled the 7th with a perfect sword drawing technique. The 8th put me through a coral shelf, and I came out the other side coughing blood into salt water. I can throw that sword 100 times, he said, conversationally. How many more of those do you have? When your spirit essence runs out, you simply die. He was completely correct, and it did not matter, because I had not been surviving. I had been building. By the 4th exchange, I was predicting the sword paths. Not reacting. Predicting, off 100 feet of water, reading them for me. And on the 6th, I put a chi-breaking needle into his upper arm. He did not even bother to look at it. A true Essence Realm aura stops a beginner's needle the way a coat stops rain. Except that Shaolei had remade those needles for me out of the white-headed spider's fangs, and out of its venom sacs. And on that needle, the point is not the weapon. His arm went black in about 4 seconds. 9 Dragon's mysterious water shield came down on him, and he had to spend real power breaking out of it. And then he had to spend the rest of what he had left, suppressing the poison before it reached his heart. Old force spent, new force not yet risen. Those few breaths were the entire reason I had gone into the water in the first place. And I took out Dean Mo's jade talisman. He felt it fire. He was true essence realm. Of course he felt it fire. And he understood in one instant exactly what was coming. He threw everything he owned into the gap. Every artifact on his body, including one he detonated deliberately. An entire career's worth of equipment spent in under a second to build a wall out of debris. Dean Mo's sealed strike ate all of it. That talisman held enough force to threaten a true essence third layer. An old teacher handed it to a nobody at a graduation, years earlier, and said something kind. And I had carried it across half a continent, and it took Yuan Shao off the reef and out of the world. I stripped what was left of the body and ran, and behind me something enormous came up out of the dark and swallowed the corpse whole. And the sea went smooth again like nothing had occurred. The loot was a disappointment, and I want to record that, because in the stories the true Essence Realm Assassin is a jackpot. 1,300 spirit stones, 4 mid-grade, some pills, that is all. Because Yuan Shao had spent every single thing he owned reaching the true Essence Realm 8 months earlier, and then blown his life-bound treasure in the fight. A man kills you for an inheritance and turns out to be broke. There is a lesson in there, except for one item, a white jade meditation cushion. Plain, unremarkable, the kind of thing you would use and never look at. And on the underside, very faint, 2 characters, TAIYI. I sat on it that night to test it and nearly fell off. It doubles cultivation speed. Doubles. Which for me, stacked on everything else, means my rate is roughly 3 times what it was that morning. And it clarifies the soul while it does it, which is the part that actually matters for a man trying to grind an impossible soul-refining fragment. 1 year of my cultivation is now 3 years of the old work. I had a plan to reach half-step in 5 years. It collapsed to 3, maybe 4, overnight, sitting on a cushion I found on a corpse. That is the third one. The soul-refining fragment out of a dead beast tamer's cave. The true disciple token that fell into Shaolei's hands out of a plant demon. And now a cushion off an assassin who was not supposed to be anywhere near me. 3 Taiyis, from 3 unconnected sources, inside 2 years. I stopped calling it a coincidence somewhere around the second one, and I have never gotten an answer about it since. The Yulian archipelago is 13 islands in a crescent, and from the air it looks like something dropped a necklace. Main island, about 40 or 50 square kilometers. A spine of mountains 10 miles long down the middle. Rivers, a decent harbor, farm towns with 1 or 2 low-level cultivators, each keeping order over people who mostly just want to be left alone. And one thing that made it worth a great Sect's attention, a shallow vein of spirit iron. That is it. That is the entire strategic value of my exile, a shallow iron vein. The outgoing governor was named Dang Fan, 9th layer middle, 50-something, and an outer Sect disciple who had spent 10 years failing to make inner Sect. He handed over with dry, correct congratulations, and a hatred he could not quite get his face to cover. And it took me about 4 seconds to understand it, and then I felt genuinely bad. For an inner Sect disciple, this posting is a punishment. It is the place they send you when they want you out of the conversation. For an outer Sect disciple, this posting is the summit of an entire career. It is the highest a man like Dung Fan was ever going to get, and he had climbed for a decade to reach it. And I took it off him by being sentenced. Then he walked me through the accounts, and I sat down. 10 tons of spirit iron a year go to the Sect. Fixed. That is the quota. And everything else on the island belongs to the island lord. Market fees, spirit field taxes, the mine's actual profit after the quota. All of it. 1,000 spirit stones a year, minimum, for doing nothing whatsoever except existing on the correct rock. No wonder Deng Fan hated me. And I sat with that for a while, and I revised something I had been carrying since the sentencing. This is not a punishment. This is a posting a man could get rich on, which means the Sect is not as black as it looked from inside my own grievance. A real punishment was available. A real punishment was the East Sea Front, 20 years, with the Hanhai Sect on the other side of it. Song Mingxuan had not just reduced my sentence. He had gotten me a business. There was a spirit spring on that island. A tiny one, the kind that makes the grass around it slightly better than the grass elsewhere. I planted the 1,000-year green water blue lotus in it and poured a bottle of essence of ghee water on the roots. Half a month later, the dead brown petals came back blue. And then it started feeding the spring back. Not draining, feeding. Whatever that plant does, it does not just consume ambient qi, it processes it and returns it richer. And the density around that spring climbed week over week until standing next to it felt like standing in an inner Sect immortal cave. I had a private cave better than my old one, on an island nobody had ever heard of because a plant demon tried to eat me. So I became a farmer. Spirit grain in terraces, spirit medicine in beds, spring breeze and fine rain to irrigate, which is a technique so basic they teach it to children, and which turns out to be the single most used spell of my entire life. Work at sunrise, rest at sunset, months of it. No enemies, no politics, nobody watching. And in that boredom, the fourth layer of the Yiyuan Gui Shui scripture, which had been sitting at 999 out of 1,000 for over a year like a stuck door, quietly opened. 6 months on that island, ninth layer, perfection peak. There is nowhere above that. From there, you stop rising and start compressing, folding the whole thing tighter and tighter until the container gives way and you become something else. Being a lord is mostly paperwork, and I hated every page of it. Year-end brought ledgers, an audit, a spirit iron shipment I had to escort personally because the last 3 escorts had been robbed, and a mine I had somehow mismanaged into breaking exactly even, which takes talent. And it brought the boars. A black thorn wild boar king, 9th layer, with a herd behind it, coming down out of my 10-mile mountain spine and eating my farm towns one field at a time. I walked out to meet 30-odd charging animals with the sort of resigned expression a man wears when he is about to do the 10th thing on a list he wrote at breakfast. The island's own cultivators came out to watch, and they came out to watch me die. 6 months of a new lord who never showed his face. 6 months of whispering that the sect had sent them a weak one. And now the weak one was walking alone into 30 charging blackthorn boars. 1 pass. 12 heads on the ground behind me and not a drop of blood on my robes. Then the king came, which is a genuinely alarming animal, a 9th layer beast the size of a farm cart with tusks like harrows. And I gave it a few sword lights and it went down like a small mountain being demolished. And I turned around and found several hundred people looking at me the way you look at weather. You have to understand who those people are. They have never left this archipelago. Most of them have never seen a cultivator above the 6th layer. To them, the spirit origin 9th layer is not a rung on a ladder, it is the ceiling of the world. The top of everything, the level at which men become legends. A god had turned up to do pest control. I gave away every carcass I could not be bothered to sell. 12 boars and a king, distributed to farm towns that had been eating grass porridge for a month. I bought the loyalty of an entire island with garbage, and I have never gotten better value for anything in my life. The boar king had gotten that big by eating a 1,000-year purple-veined Ganoderma, which was consequently gone, which annoyed me for about a day until I found the log it had grown on. Damp, shaded. In my previous life, I grew mushrooms in a plastic tub on a balcony because a video told me it was easy. And it was not, and I learned more about humidity than any man should. So I built a shaded incubator over that log and started trying to farm spores. And out of the log, at speed, bolted a silver rat. I had it flattened in the air with a palm ready, and then I stopped, because I recognized what it was. A spirit-devouring rat, which is a pest, which also has, for exactly the reason it is a pest, the finest nose for concentrated spiritual chi of anything that walks. I made it a servant beast instead, and named it Xiao Hei, which means little white, because I was tired. 3 days of walking behind a rat, refined gold ore, silver, 2 hidden spirit springs nobody had ever found, a 100-year vermilion fruit tree standing in a gully 40 minutes from my own front door. About 1,000 spirit stones of raw material, and several items sitting near yellow rank, all of it on an island that had been surveyed by the sect twice. And then Xiaohei stopped at a blank rock wall and started scratching. I split it open, and an underground water vein blew out of the mountain and knocked me over. More water elemental power in that vein than the entire Xuanshui Dark River had. And the Xuanshui Dark River is a sect treasure with a 3-tier access system and a formation over it. My essence of Gui water supply, the thing I had been freezing in a river for 4 years to produce 1 drop at a time, was solved permanently that afternoon by a rat. Plus 10 acres of irrigable spirit field on the runoff. Xiaohei, incidentally, has since worked out that it can bully apex predators, because it has correctly deduced that nothing on this island will touch it while I am standing there. It walks up to things 400 times its size and squeaks at them. That is just borrowing somebody else's power, I told it once. It did not care. It has never cared. I planted everything I had found around the new spring, and within days, the island lord's residence had a spirit medicine garden that a mid-sized clan would have gone to war over. And then I checked the calendar and realized that Chen Bojun was a month overdue. I had written to the Huainan Chen family months earlier with an offer, and it was a real offer, not charity. Come and run the administration of this island for me. I will pay properly. I hate paperwork, and you are good at it. 13th Elder Chen Bojun and a dozen family cultivators had set out, a month late, and no messages. I found them on a reef island 4 days out, and they had been under siege for half a month. The 18 thieves of Zhoushan, their one-eyed leader, 9th layer perfection, and enough men to have ground the family's bought defensive formation down to a flicker. I came in low over the water, and I heard the terms being offered. "Hand over the girl," the one-eyed man said. "10 of you cut off your own heads. The rest kneel." And a 16-year-old boy inside that formation shouted something back at him that I did not catch. "Cut that kid's tongue out," said the one-eyed man comfortably, "and bring it up here." And then I heard Chen Bo-jun answer. He was bleeding out. I could see it from a quarter mile up, the way a man stands when he is already finished and has decided not to sit down. "My Chen family," he said, "has never had the habit of selling its own. Everyone over 30, with me. The rest of you, run. Carry word to Xuan Yi and let him avenge us." The formation collapsed, and the one-eyed man started laughing and said the thing that turned out to be the last full sentence of his life, which was that no inner sect disciple was ever going to hear about any of this. "Oh," I said, behind him. "Really?" He turned and cut at me with everything a 9th layer perfection has. I caught the saber between 2 fingers, not blocked, caught, and the entire force of it went nowhere, because his power arrived at about 1/3 of what he thought he was sending, and I have been able to see that for 2 years. 20 breaths later, Chen Bo-jun and his 6 surviving elders broke out through the wreck of their own formation and boarded the pirate flagship expecting to die covering my retreat, and found every pirate on that deck dead, and me standing there holding a head, feeling mildly embarrassed. 13th Master, I said, "Sorry I am late." The rest of the fleet came in then, because the rest of the fleet did not know yet, and I answered them with something that did not exist in any manual in this world, because I built it myself out of the 9 dragons' mysterious water shield. 9 dragons soar into the sky. Thousands of tons of the South Sea came up off the surface in 9 columns, and each of those 9 steered independently, because a shield that holds one thing in place is a shield that can hold 9 things in motion if you stop reading the instructions. They took the boarding wave out of the air, and then they went down on the fleet and rolled it over. And on that deck, 6 men in their 50s, who had spent their entire lives watching the Huainan Chen family die one funeral at a time, stood in the rain of that and did the arithmetic. He is 20-something. He is 1 step from the true essence realm. Nobody said it out loud, and everybody said it with their face. I kept the pirate ships, all of them, because if you want to get rich, you build roads first, and out here the roads are hulls. And then I sat down for 3 days and wrote a management system for an island, out of half-remembered office life from a world with spreadsheets in it, and, I admit this freely, several rebirth novels. Profit sharing on the spirit iron mine above the Sect's quota, so that the miners have a reason to find more instead of exactly 10 tons. Tiered revenue splits on the new spirit fields, so that improving your plot is not a gift to the landlord. Performance-linked pay on the boar farm and the Ganoderma beds. And 1 local outsider, promoted specifically for the job, whose only task is to audit the Chen family's books, so that the family running my island cannot quietly skim my island. I took it to Chen Bo-jun to be corrected, because he had 40 years of administration, and I had a memory of a company I did not enjoy working at. He read the first page and stopped breathing. Then he talked at me for an entire day, question after question, and I answered them. And then he took the papers back to his courtyard and paced in it all night. I could hear him from my window. In the morning, he called it a masterpiece, to be handed down as a family heirloom, which I thought was a bit much for an incentive scheme. And he shipped the entire thing to Huainan by talisman. Within a month, the Huainan Chen family rewrote its own 1,000-year internal rules, around a document written in 3 days by a man who was exiled from his sect for punching a policeman. Efficiency in the clan jumped visibly inside a season. Grassroots cultivators, who had been coasting for a decade, started competing for postings. Young men in the outer branches began cheering for a distant cousin they had never met and could not have picked out of a crowd. I never learned any of that happened. Nobody told me. I found out years afterward, secondhand, from a man who assumed I already knew. On my island, the mine went from breaking even to 2,000 or 3,000 spirit stones a year in clear profit. The boars survived captivity and started breeding, which I had genuinely not expected, and 5 purple-veined Ganoderma buds came up on the U-log. I also had to weed out about 40 poisonous mushrooms that came up with them, which the incubator had encouraged with tremendous enthusiasm. All of that fighting had been doing something quiet. Pirates, Yuan Shao, the Boar King, the Reef. Every one of those had deepened my water intent by a fraction. And fractions compound. 1 month on the Taiyi cushion beside my new spring, and the panel printed a line I had been chasing for 4 years. Yi Yuan Gui Shui, Scripture, 4th layer, softness, resilience, purity, depth. That is what the technique says about itself, and it is not poetry, it is a specification. The highest good is like water, which benefits all things without striving, and the derived ability was the thing that changed my next decade. At the 4th layer, I do not just extract essence of Gui water. I can use it in combat, directly, which multiplies what I hit with by several times. Out of a resource I produce myself, for free, forever. My spirit essence, at that point, beat a typical half-step true origins in both quality and quantity. The road to half-step had almost no bottleneck left in it at all. Fewer than a handful of people in the entire Cloudwater sect have reached the 4th layer of that scripture in the last century. It is harder than entering the true essence realm. That is not my assessment. That is the assessment printed in the sect's own records. It took me 3 or 4 years, on a rock, alone. Chenbo Jun came to see me the week after, and physically could not breathe properly in the room. He stood there, 60 years old, 9th layer, having spent his entire life on cultivation, and I watched a lifetime turn into a joke behind a man's eyes. He offered me the clan's full backing, everything, openly, and he meant it. And I said no. Too close a family becomes a cage, I told him. Trade with me instead. Sell me things. Let me pay you. That relationship lasts. He did not like it, and he did not argue, and I think about that conversation more than he ever knew. 3 of the 8 Ningen pill materials in the box. The trade fleet's first 3 runs were hijacked, and then the 18 thieves of Zhoushan, whose 18th brother's head I had taken on that reef, blockaded the entire archipelago. Nothing in, nothing out. And here's the thing that nobody in a story ever accounts for. A spirit origin cultivator cannot cross an ocean, not one of them. Flight is a true essence realm privilege, and everything below it moves by hull. My blockade did not starve anyone. It simply meant that 200,000 or 300,000 people were now, in a very literal sense, in a box, and the island turned on me inside 3 weeks. I went to a harbor tavern in plain clothes, because I make a habit of hearing what is actually being said, and a stranded loose cultivator at the next table explained me to his friends at some length. The new lord is a vain fool, he said. He will not beg the sect for help because he wants the glory. The Zhoushan bandits have a true essence realm. What use is a spirit origin hero against that? He wanted to play the hero, and he has dragged all of us in with him. I paid for my tea and left, and I want to be clear that he was not wrong about any of the facts. He was only wrong about one number. The Zhoushan pirates started as 108 sworn brothers. They were down to 17. That is not decline. That is what winning looks like in that business. They had spent 30 years robbing hard enough to buy true essence realm promotions for their leadership, and every brother who died paid for part of one. And they had gotten big enough to be a problem. The island clans and trading houses of the Zhoushan Sea had tolerated them for decades as useful vermin. Someone to blame, someone to hire, someone to point at a rival's caravan. And then the vermin started biting the caravans of the people who fed them. So the blockade of my archipelago was not really about me. It was a public demonstration, aimed at everyone else on that sea, that the 18 thieves were not to be touched. 2 of them came in person for it, 11th brother, bald, bearded, half-step true origin, and, I am told, contemptuous in the specific way of a man who has never lost. If that kid shows his face, he said in front of a room full of people, I will twist his head off and use it as a chamber pot. And 3rd brother, thin, quiet, careful, and true essence realm. And in that same conversation, one of them said a sentence that I did not hear for another 2 years, and that I have never been able to close. There is also a big customer, he said, who paid a hefty price to have him killed. No name, nothing else. Just that somebody, somewhere, had already opened an account on me and paid up front. 3rd brother had also brought 11th brother a gift, which turned out to matter enormously. 2 dragon grasses and a bottle of Millennium Spirit milk. The last materials 11th brother needed for his own Ningen pill. He had been collecting for 11 years. A servant came in with tea. 3rd brother frowned at him, and the frown was the correct instinct, and it was about 2 seconds too slow. And I have thought since that he was probably the only genuinely dangerous mind in that entire organization, because what he had just noticed was that this was a temporary camp on a pirate island. Where, he said, standing up, did the servants come from? 11th brother's head was already in the air by the time he finished the sentence. Cut clean, no wind up, no announcement. I put the tray down and lifted my face. They had a formation array over the outer sea approach to that island, and it should have stopped anything below true essence. It did not stop me, because the 4th layer of the Yiyuan Guishui scripture lets me read spiritual fluctuations inside a moving current, and a sea formation is a spiritual fluctuation sitting in a moving current. And I walked through it the way you walk through a beaded curtain. Life and death are predestined, I said. Why make such a fuss about it, you pirates? Surely you understood this principle before anyone. And then I fought a true essence realm cultivator straight, with nothing borrowed. No talisman this time. Dean Mo's gift was spent on Yuan Shao, and there was not going to be another one. And somewhere in the middle of that, under a pressure I had no business standing in, overturning sea 3-fold waves broke through to perfection in the middle of a swing. The building we were standing in stopped existing. The crater went out past the compound wall, and then past the tree line, and trees went down across that whole island like cut wheat in a ring. Every pirate on Liusha Island came running, and I could hear them arriving, and I could hear them failing to process it. That is not true essence realm, somebody kept saying. That is spirit origin. That is a spirit origin cultivator. Third Brother's entire plan was depth. Outlast the boy. A true essence realm's reservoir against a spirit origins. And there is no contest in that comparison. It is not even a fight. It is a subtraction problem. And my power was not running out. I watched him work out why. And I watched him work out something worse, which is that the boy in front of him was getting sharper by the exchange. He realized, with real horror, that he was not fighting me. He was being used as a whetstone. So he called out his life-bound treasure, which is a thing a true essence cultivator does exactly once in a fight, and which they only do when the alternative is dying. A sky-piercing giant halberd. It locks on. You cannot dodge it. That is the whole point of it, and it is why he had spent his fortune on it. And I answered with a technique that did not exist 30 seconds earlier. I had the idea months before, on my island, doing nothing. If overturning C can stack 3 separate waves of power into one palm, then why can the sword-drawing technique not stack 3 separate peak bursts into one draw? And I had tried it, and failed at it, and failed at it, and failed at it, every single time, for months, because overturning C was only at major achievement, and I did not have the model. And overturning C had hit perfection about half a minute earlier. One method leads to mastery. That is not a proverb, it is a mechanic. The bottleneck came open in the middle of a fight I was losing. Sword-drawing technique, MIE. 3 stacked peak bursts in one draw, and it is more than the sum of everything else I own put together. And when it came out of the scabbard, every sword in the hands of every pirate standing on that hillside hummed in answer. It cracked the halberd, and a cracked life-bound treasure does not simply break, it hammers the soul of the man it is bonded to, because he grew it inside his own Dantian. And I watched a true essence realm cultivator's eyes go out of focus. I was white as paper by then, and completely empty, except that the 4th layer of my technique refills me in a few breaths. And a true essence realm cultivator's recovery takes considerably longer than that. And that gap is the entire reason I am alive. Sky Eagle Hand shattered the panic shield he threw up. And then, with the very last of everything I had, I finished a true essence realm cultivator with the plainest move I own. 9 refinements bone forging fist, mountain crushing. The beginner's punch, off the free shelf. Day 1. The thing they hand 12-year-olds. It caved his chest in and put him into a hillside. 90% of the pirates on that island escaped, because I could not have chased a limping man. I went and found the cell where they had chained up the Yulian people they had taken off my hijacked ships, cut them loose, and sailed all of us home in the pirates' own ship, because mine had been sunk 2 weeks earlier. A month of seclusion on the Taiyi cushion turned the fight into the breakthrough. Half-step true origin realm. True essence roughly 3 times denser. Combat power up about 5 times. 5. An ordinary cultivator making that step gets 1.5, maybe 2. I got 5. And the reason is not talent, and it is not luck. It is that my foundation has been overbuilt since the first month of the first year, when I was grinding basic boxing that everybody else had already thrown away. Everything I did that looked stupid at the time got paid back at that moment, all at once, with interest. I now backed myself against a late-stage true essence cultivator, which is an insane sentence for a spirit origin realm man to write down. And I wrote it down anyway. 5 of 8 Ningen materials. Flood Dragon Ginseng, 3-color Lingji, Jade Fruit, and the Dragon Grass and 1,000-year Bell Spirit Milk. I took off 2 dead pirate lords who had spent 11 years collecting them. 3 left. All 3 rarer than everything I had. And then the story got out, and I could not stop it. 90% of those pirates escaped, remember, and every one of them had a mouth. A spirit origin realm cultivator, they said, in every port on that sea, killed a true essence realm in a straight fight. No talisman, no trap, no ambush. He walked in as a servant and beat him to death. There are tens of thousands of 9th layer cultivators in the South Sea. Of those, perhaps 10 could fight a true essence realm and survive it. A bare handful could kill one. My name went off across that ocean like a dropped lamp, and I hated it. Because I have believed one thing since I was 15, which is that a reputation before you are strong enough is a death warrant with your address on it. And I had just walked out onto a stage I was not ready to stand on. And then I noticed the other half, which took about a week. Envoys started arriving. Loose cultivators started arriving, in numbers, looking for a lord worth attaching to. Trading houses that had been ignoring my harbor for 2 years suddenly discovered it on their charts. The boar farm scaled, the Ganoderma scaled. Chen Bojun opened sales channels to 4 neighboring island lords in a month, and then 6 more. 200,000 or 300,000 people on that archipelago decided, all at once, that they believed in me. I have never been comfortable with that, and it has never stopped being useful. The Grand Elder of the Guo family came to my door, and he came in person. True Essence fourth layer, 300 years old, head of a clan that owns a prefecture, walking up the path to the residence of a half-step exile on an island with one iron mine. That is not how the world works, and both of us knew it. He is the man who, years earlier, when I was an 8th layer nobody with no name and no money, let me into his family vault to look at the Water Sword Immortal's Sword Intent Scroll. He is also the man who sold me the Xuanyuan armor. I found out later what he was doing when he heard the news. He was in his study, admiring a night jade lion carving, which is the kind of object you buy once in a century, and he let it fall out of his hand and shatter on the floor, and did not notice for several seconds. And then he explained his own family's entire business model to me over tea, without embarrassment, because he did not think it was shameful, and he was right. 3 centuries ago, he said, the Guo family was nothing, a minor clan in a minor town, and they made a bet on a weak young cultivator with an odd technique that nobody else would sponsor, and they carried him for 20 years. That young man became the Water Sword Immortal. The Guo family has been at the top of Luoshui Prefecture ever since, on the strength of one correct guess. That favor, he said, looking at me over the cup, was worth it. He had brought a young Guo prodigy with him, 20 years old, 8th layer, the pride of an entire prefecture, a boy who has been told he is exceptional since he could walk. That boy spent an afternoon watching his own old ancestor speak as an equal to a man his own age, and I watched something inside him quietly come apart, and there was nothing kind I could have said. And then the actual invitation. In 6 months, on Flying Spirit Island, every True Essence Realm island power of the Jushan Sea would meet to finish the Jushan pirates for good, and, more honestly, to carve up the sea's resource zones now that the vermin they had all tolerated for 30 years had started biting their own caravans. I was invited, as an equal, half-step, exiled, 20-something, sitting at a table of True Essence Realm clan heads. I accepted. And then I spent a full day being taught, 1-to-1, by a True Essence 4th layer, about how to consolidate a half-step foundation and how to actually make the crossing, which is guidance I could no longer get from my own sect, because exiles do not go home. And there was not one person in the South Sea who owed me an explanation of anything. He gave it for free, because of a scroll he let a nobody read 4 years earlier. I have thought about that a lot. The Guo family are not good people. They are simply extremely good at identifying who is going to matter and being nice to them before anybody else does. And they have been compounding that for 300 years. Island profits piled up to 6,000 or 7,000 spirit stones, and they were, functionally, useless to me. My spirit spring out cultivates spirit stones now. Sitting next to that lotus for a day beats burning a mid-grade stone. So I took the entire fortune to a Tianan city auction and burned all of it in one afternoon. A 600-year Qiqing Xuan root, a 700-year Lingbi flower, both of them fought over by True Essence Realm buyers, who could not work out who the young man in plain clothes bidding against them was. 7 of 8 Ning-Gen materials, and the 8th is the problem. A 1,000-year Flying Illusion Spirit Vine. It is the component that transforms spiritual sense during the breakthrough, which is the part of a Ning-Gen pill that actually does the work. The last one that came to open auction went for about 100 mid-grade spirit stones. That is roughly a third of the entire pill's value in one ingredient. I was, after that auction, completely broke, so I gave myself a deadline, and I wrote it on the wall of my cave. 3 years. If I cannot find the vine in 3 years, I break into the True Essence realm without the pill, which is a forced ascension. Low success rate. And failure does not mean you try again next month. Failure means a crippled foundation for 20 years, or the road closed permanently. And there are men in every sect on this continent who did exactly that, and are still alive, and still 9th layer, and will be until they die. I wrote 3 years on the wall, and then I went and got the old map. Years earlier, on the Luoshui River, an assassin ambushed me. He was drugged out of his mind, and he had a map in his personal storage pouch, not his working one, which is where a man keeps the thing that matters. I had never followed it up because I had never been strong enough for whatever was at the end of it. Half a month of travel to the border between Luoshui and the South Sea. A 9th layer demon bear on the way, killed in one strike, paws harvested, which is a sentence I could not have written 4 years earlier. And then a forest under a fog. And the fog blocks spiritual sense. At half-step true origin, standing at the edge of it, my perception was cut down to 8 or 9 zhang, 25 meters, from several hundred, which told me 2 things immediately. That is not weather, that is a formation stacked on terrain, and whoever built it worked at the true essence level or above. And it told me a 3rd thing about the dead man whose map I was holding. He got in once. He took the easy part of the opportunity and ran. He mapped the rest for the day he would be strong enough to come back. And he died first. And a man like that, who spent his life ambushing people on rivers, would absolutely have left something behind for whoever inherited his map. I walked in anyway. Fog that touches the soul means a true essence-level sight inside it, so I did not go straight in. I spent a week sweeping the outer forest with Xiaohei's nose, and the outer forest alone gave up hundreds of spirit plants, 27 of them over a century old, and a 700-year, 9-death soul returning grass, which is a thing men write letters about. And then the rat stopped and stood up on its hind legs and would not move. At a patch of ground my own half-step senses had walked over 4 times. The dead assassin's revenge trap. A trigger detonation array wired into the entire site, buried, dormant, waiting for whoever inherited his map to walk into his garden and be very pleased with himself. I found its power node with an alchemist's sense, which is the one thing in this world that reads the inside of a sealed container, and I killed it from outside the perimeter with the object manipulation technique without ever stepping over the line. That was close, I said, to a rat. Without Xiaohei I would have walked in, and been extremely satisfied with myself, and been buried. Inside the fog there was a garden, a small wooden house 200 or 300 square meters, a fence, a spirit medicine field laid out in careful rows by somebody who cared about rows, and old, scuffed footprints going in and coming straight back out, one visit, in a hurry. The assassin got in once, grabbed a handful of whatever was nearest, and ran, and never came back because he ran out of years. The array over the garden was a broken tangle by then, no safe path left in it at all, so Xiaohei walked the perimeter, found the weakest seam, and I smashed through there. And in the middle of the field, in the best position, tended, was a flying illusion spirit vine, 8, maybe 900 years old, the exact 8th material of the Ningjin pill, and not old enough. I stood in a dead man's vegetable patch and laughed until I had to sit down. The house belonged to a plain man, one landscape painting, competently done, not valuable, a few pill bottles of ordinary quality, a box with 5 mid-grade spirit stones, and about 200 low-grade in it, which is the savings of a careful person. Unfamiliar robes on a peg, cut in a style I did not recognize, a token with one word on it, Ling Hai, and jade slips, a stack of them, not one martial art, not one technique, a lifetime of notes on growing spirit medicine, written by a man who had clearly grown old doing it, with the soil conditions and the failures recorded in the same hand. I took the field, all of it, every plant. Then I swept the dust out of his house, put his robes back on the peg, closed the door, and bowed to it before I left. I do not know who he was. He grew things and wrote it down, and somebody like me came along 400 years later and took the lot. And after I had gone, something rippled in that empty house, and the token in my storage pouch glowed exactly once, and I did not feel it and did not know for years. Home. Everything replanted at the spring, and then the experiment, because I had noticed something and could not stop noticing it. 3 drops of essence of gui water a day onto the flying illusion spirit vine, measured, recorded, same time each morning. And here's the thing that turned out to be worth more than the vine. 1,000-year spirit medicine does not mean a plant that has been alive for 1,000 years. It means a plant carrying 1,000 years of accumulated potency. Those are not the same statement. Everybody in this world says the first one and means the second. And nobody has ever bothered to separate them, because the two have always been identical in practice. Essence of gui water adds roughly 10 years of potency per day. I could grow the last Ningjin material myself, in about a year. Nobody else on this continent can do that, and I want to be precise about why, because it is not magic. 1 drop of essence of gui water sells for 300 spirit stones. Pouring 3 of those on a plant every morning for a year costs 300,000 spirit stones of product. It cost me nothing, because of a 4th layer technique almost nobody has, and a centrifuge trick I remembered from a classroom, and because the water vein under my island is smaller than the Xuanshui Dark River, and therefore more concentrated. Everything I own is like that. Not one of my advantages is impressive on its own. They only work stacked. While the vine grew, I reread the sword drawing technique Jade Slip for the first time in 4 years, and discovered I had been practicing it wrong since the first week. Genuinely wrong, not a variation. The man who created that technique built it around one idea, and the idea is draw. A sudden burst, the whole of your power released in the instant the blade clears the sheath. That is not what I took from it. What I took was hide. Pack more spirit essence and more sword aura into the scabbard so that the draw hits harder. And then, later, store. Hold it for hours. Hold it for a day. Walk around with it. That is not the technique. That is my misreading of the technique. And it is why my sword drawing technique is stronger than the one in the book. And the panel had been confirming it for years without ever telling me, because every time I deviated further from the original, the bar moved faster. Ordinary cultivators memorize a martial art the way you memorize a formula and recite it back. I understood the formula, and then I factored it. That, and the panel, is the entire reason I have perfections where other people have one minor achievement. So I decided to break the ceiling of a perfected art on purpose, by changing its concept. First answer. And I want you to know I took it seriously for a full day. To store more, you would have to stop being human. A Ren race body could hold a monstrous amount. Rejected. I am not turning myself into a 3-meter muscle man in exchange for a better opening move. Second answer, 3 days later. And this one I loved. Not draw, not hide, not store. Seed. Plant a seed of sword intent in the Dantian and let it grow into a tree. Inanimate things are finite. Life is infinite. A grass seed lifts a 1,000-ton rock. A grass seed splits a mountain, given time. And nobody has ever built a martial art on that. Because nobody has ever thought of a sword as anything but a dead, sharp thing. And it failed. Completely. For a month. And then I worked out why. And the answer was humiliating in a very specific way. A sword is a dead thing and a killing thing. To draw life out of a sword seed is to make life out of death. And that transformation is beyond a spirit origin realm cultivator. It is beyond most true essence cultivators. A primary schooler cannot covet calculus, which is, incidentally, my verdict on everything else in my head. All that physics, all that cosmology, time, entropy, relativity, cells, the whole shelf, worthless to me right now. And the single greatest asset I own, later, if I live. Third answer, 10 days after that, bionics. Do not create life, copy its form, cells, division. 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4, and that is exactly, mechanically, how a seed lifts a boulder. It is not strength, it is a shape of growth. Build the sword seed on that pattern, and I do not need to make life. I only need to make something that behaves like it. And the panel changed. Sword drawing technique and its perfection both vanished off the display. Deleted. 4 years of work, gone from the list. And in its place, in a format I had never seen it use, sword planting technique, incomplete. Progress 1 of 10. It has never had an incomplete state before. It has never tracked a thing that does not exist yet. And here is my theory, and it is only a theory, and I have never told a living soul. That panel is the main screen of an idle cultivation game I played on a phone in a previous life, in a world with no cultivation in it, fused to my divine soul somewhere in the transmigration. I remember that game. It had far more functions than this one is showing me, which means the missing functions are not gone. They are locked. And if they unlock as my soul grows, then the true essence realm and a true alchemist's divine sense should prove it one way or the other. I was so deep in building it that I forgot what month it was and turned up half a day late to meet the Guo Grand Elder and 2 other true essence realm cultivators for the sailing. 3 men who between them own about 1/5 of a sea, standing on a dock, waiting. The Grand Elder looked at my face and did not say anything about the lateness, and later I found out what he was actually doing, which was recalculating. The light in the boy's eyes, he said afterward, was too sharp to be fully controlled. That is a divine soul showing through the front of a man's head. With a Ningjun pill, this one's odds of crossing into true essence are already 50 or 60%. In 6 months. Perhaps, he said, I underestimated him. At the port on Flying Spirit Island, the host came down personally to meet a half-step nobody. And the host was a true essence late cultivator in Confucian robes named Peng Song. And he called me Junior Brother. I did not understand for a second, and then I did, all at once, and had to work at my face. Peng Song is a personal disciple of Lingbo Genren, which makes him Song Mingxuan's Junior Brother, which makes the man who sentenced me, and the man greeting me on that dock, the same family. And I had been on this ocean for 3 years thinking I had no one. His master, he said, was in seclusion after a breakthrough, and had left instructions before going in to look after me if I turned up. And then he told me what he thought of my exile, unprompted, while we walked. Past the middle of the true essence realm, he said, you should be out here, expanding territory, honing yourself against people who genuinely want you dead. Instead, they take pride in sitting inside the mountain to cultivate, and treat being sent out as a punishment. The sect will need rectifying sooner or later. I had spent 3 years thinking of myself as a man serving a sentence, and a true essence late from my own lineage described the exact same posting as the correct career. And I had to go and sit down for a minute. Then he gave me a meeting gift, out of his sleeve, casually, the way you hand someone a snack. A jade bottle with a Ningjin pill in it, 10,000 spirit stones of material, a thing that has a price and no market. The The exact object I had spent a year of my life hunting, and burned an entire fortune failing to buy, and set myself a 3-year deadline over. He handed it to me on a dock as a hello. And the value is not what you think, and he explained that too. A second pill is not a spare. A second pill is insurance. If the breakthrough fails, the difference between having one and having two is the difference between trying again next season and spending 20 years repairing a broken foundation. And if it succeeds, you take the second one afterward, and it stabilizes the new realm and saves you half a year. Then he spent several days privately teaching me the things an exile can no longer buy from his own sect. And I found out much later that he was quietly appalled the entire time. Everything I owned was at perfection or major achievement, including the basic fist, including the basic sword forms, including the footwork, and I had the 4th layer of the Yiyuan Gui Shui scripture at Spirit Origin Realm, which almost nobody at True Essence 1st layer in the entire sect has. A True Essence late cultivator, 60 years older than me, caught himself feeling jealous of a half-step, recognized it, and had to actively suppress it to protect his own Dao heart. He told me that himself, years later, and laughed about it, and I did not laugh. 30-odd True Essence Realm cultivators in one hall, the largest gathering of power I had ever been in a room with. I made myself invisible for 5 days and watched. They laid out a map of the Joshan Sea the size of a courtyard and cut it like a cake. Spheres of influence, patrol obligations, mutual non-aggression on each other's caravans, which is what the entire meeting was actually about. And the Joshan pirates were sentenced to extermination in absentia by a room full of men who had used them for 30 years. I had come braced for a battle. I had my formation plates in my sleeve and an escape route memorized off the harbor chart. Nothing happened. Nobody attacked anybody. 5 days of extremely polite carving. It took me 2 days to stop being baffled by that, and then I did the arithmetic and felt stupid. 30 True Essence Realm cultivators, most of them late stage, in agreement. There is no egg in this world that throws itself at that rock. I collected the benefits of the treaty without saying one word in the room. Peng Song also taught me the Great River Sword Art, which is officially human-grade intermediate, which sounds like an insult, and it is not. And the reason is beautiful. Its power scales off the user's own spirit essence, with no ceiling written into the form. An ordinary cultivator simply cannot feed it enough to be worth learning. A mountain stream harms nobody. A great river cannot be resisted. And then he mentioned, not as a big announcement, that it is the first half of the Xuanshui lineage's Great River Piercing Heaven Sword, which is the sword of the Water Sword Immortal. I said thank you very normally and went and sat on a rock by myself for a while. Being handed that means somebody had quietly decided to let me into the core of my own lineage while I was 3,000 miles away serving a sentence for assault. And then, at the exact moment of leaving, my divine sense caught a shadow. Not a person, not a location, a shape of attention, out on the water, in the direction of home. So I did not sail. I stayed several more days on Flying Spirit Island. I went and visited several people, and I did something that I did not tell anyone about, and that I am not going to describe yet. A month later, I was mid-ocean on the Sparrow's back, with the Great River Sword Art already at minor achievement, 7 out of 10. Because my perfect Yunshui 13 sword styles turns out to be the same river in miniature, and the panel simply poured one into the other, and I stopped, in open sea, with no land in any direction, and called them out first. 2 men came up out of the water. Sun Shuren, now first of the Joshan 18, True Essence, 2nd layer, who looks like a frail scholar and moves like something under a rock, and his second brother, 1 eye, a gold hook where a hand should be, True Essence, late, and a body cultivator, which is the worst possible combination for me personally. Bai Hung was courteous about it, which I preferred. 3 of my sworn brothers died by you, he said. I have come to collect. Your people attacked me, I said. Am I expected to hold still and let them kill me? And I am an inner sect disciple of the Cloudwater sect. And he gave me the answer that this entire ocean runs on. The strong are respected, he said. You have not even reached True Essence. And as for the Cloudwater sect, we cannot handle them. But there are always people in this world who can. That client again. 2nd time. Still no name. They opened on killing moves immediately. No feeling out. Which is how professionals do it, and which nearly ended me in the first 4 seconds. Blood demon body refining, the one-eyed man swelling up into a furnace of blood energy until he blotted out a piece of sky. And netherworld hand from a True Essence 2nd layer at the same time. Overturning sea met both at once, and I was thrown, coughing blood into the wind. And the follow-up punch cracked the Xuanyuan armor across its entire surface. That armor was 15 years old. I had worn it every single day since I was a child in another man's body. It ate that punch, and it died doing it. And in the silence of being knocked through open air, with the wind past my ears and the sea a long way down, and the world going very wide and very quiet, a bottleneck I had been stuck against for 3 years came open. Wind and cloud, formless body. Perfection. I stopped being anywhere. Bai Hung screamed a warning at his brother, and it was too late, because the one-eyed man had just spent everything he had on 2 consecutive full-power outbursts. Old force gone, new force not yet risen. One flash of light took his head off, and I was somewhere else before it landed in the water. Alone, against a true essence second layer, and I could dodge everything he had, and it was still going to kill me. Because every dodge on a perfect movement technique burns spirit essence, and mine refills fast. And his refills faster. And a true essence reservoir against a half-step reservoir is not a fight, it is a countdown. If this continues, I thought, quite calmly, he simply grinds me down, and then he kills me. So I stopped dodging. I stopped in midair, in front of a true essence second-layer cultivator, and Bai Hung read that as surrender, which is exactly what it looked like. And he hit me with a great Shui heavenly palm, which is yellow rank or above, straight on, no defense. I also, at that exact moment, could feel a third presence out on the water, far worse than either of them, and I could not locate it at all, which told me everything I needed to know about what it was. These two found me in an open ocean, 400 miles from anywhere, at night. 2 pirates do not do that. They were only the knife. And then I touched the seed I had been growing in my dantian for 4 months, and the sword planting technique fired for the first time in its existence. Bai Hung, in the middle of a sky full of his own killing move, with a boy hanging motionless in front of it, saw a grass seed, a frail one, small, and a tender sprout pushing its own shell open in the void. And then it was a sword light, and it tore a yellow rank palm apart like wet paper, and it kept going, and it split the black clouds over that ocean, and sunlight came down through the hole. He died without understanding it. I watched him not understand it. His last words were a question. A grass seed. How can a grass seed hold that much power? I will tell you what I have never told anyone. Somewhere in some ancient, desolate world, there is supposed to be a 9-leaf grass that killed the sun and the moon and the stars with 1 leaf, and pierced chaos itself. My technique copies the sprouting. Only the sprouting. It does not hold 1/10,000th of that. I built it because I came from a blue planet where things grow, and because I respected that image and never once worshipped it. One day I will hold the sun and the moon too. That is not humility, and it is not arrogance. It is a schedule. And I could not tell you, even now, why it came out that strong on the first attempt. It squeezed my spirit essence and my spiritual sense absolutely dry. And I was hanging in an empty sky over an empty sea, with nothing left in me at all, when the third one surfaced. The ocean stood up. 100+ years old, enormous even standing still. And the pressure that came off him told me, immediately and without any argument, that I could not survive one move. Old Ghost Ouyang, of the Manhwa Sect. Of course I am here to kill you, he said, sounding puzzled by the question. Why would you ask? And then he confirmed it out loud, which is the only reason I know any of this. You must be the Cloudwater Sect's next generation top prodigy, he said. They have set their sights on you. They set their sights on me. I am an exile on an island with an iron mine, and somebody on another continent had put my name on a list. He sealed every direction with 1 palm, and Peng Song stepped out of the void behind me. Because that shadow I felt at the moment of leaving Flying Spirit Island was real. And I had gone back and asked him about it, and that was the thing I did not tell anyone. He had been shadowing me for a month. And he had deliberately let the ambush happen, all of it. The 2 pirates, the armor cracking, the whole thing. Because a man cannot learn any of that from a lecture. And he intended to step in the instant before I died. And instead, he had watched a half-step kill a true essence second layer without help. The standoff was short. Old Ghost Tang tried to buy him, which I appreciated for its efficiency. Bring me that boy's head, he said, and you will be an inner sect elder of the Manhwa Sect within the year. Peng Song laughed at him. Genuinely laughed, from the stomach. And Old Ghost Tang left, and on his way out he said the thing that I have not been able to put down since. The Great War has begun. We will meet again. Your Cloudwater Sect will be destroyed. And he took a long, deliberate look at my face on the way past, the way you memorize a door number. Peng Song's verdict, once the sky was empty. Junior brother, you are really great. And then the warning, and he stopped smiling to deliver it. Whether you like it or not, from today, you have stepped onto the stage between Fan Continent and High Continent. The time left to you is running out. He gave me 2 more things before he went. a jade slip he had won in a bet off a true essence late friend, which he had carried for years and never been able to read, because Peng Song is not a sword cultivator. It is a treatise on the Tao heart of the sword, and its author was personally taught by the water sword immortal. He handed a thing like that to me because it was useless to him. He was completely sincere about that, and I have never argued with it. And a life-saving formation for my island. Feed it enough spirit stones, and it holds off a true essence late for 15 minutes. 15 minutes is not a defense. 15 minutes is exactly long enough for Lingbo Zhenren to arrive from Tianan City, which is what it was measured against. And he explained the ambush, because I had been treating it as personal, and it was not. Sects routinely send killers into enemy territory to weed out promising juniors. It is a line item. Old Ghost Tang had gotten in at enormous cost by deception, and now had to run for the border or die. Because there are Dongzhen realm immortals watching that region, and they do not tolerate that class of guest. I asked how often it happens. He said, constantly. 6 months later, the question stopped being theoretical. Cloudwater Sect and Hanhai Sect are at war, and my ambush had not been special. It had been one of dozens, on the same night, across 2 continents. The entire cohort that people had been calling the strongest in decades got hit simultaneously, by name, off a list somebody had spent years compiling. Guan Fenglie was attacked by 3 true essence late cultivators at once, and survived only because a sect elder happened to be close enough, and went into seclusion, badly hurt. Bing Yuyao was ambushed. Wei Qiaolei, the Thunder Spirit son, was ambushed. Of the 10 talents of my cohort, and the 2 on either side of it, 5 or 6 in 10 are dead or crippled. Cloudwater retaliated in kind and did the same thing to theirs. Then both continents put tens of thousands of cultivators onto a 1,000-mile border and started feeding them in. 300 years ago, a war exactly like this one made the water sword immortal, and every ambitious young genius on both continents is currently hoping it makes them. And my response, which I am going to state without any dressing on it, was this. I chickened out, very cowardly. I sat on my island behind Peng Song's formation and did not step outside it. Here is the strategy, from both sides, and it is not complicated. Kill the enemy's next generation first, then bleed the rank and file in the war. Do both, and the enemy's decline is arithmetic. And I had just killed 2 true Essence Realm cultivators as a half-step, in public, on an open ocean, in front of a Hanhai elder who memorized my face. I am on the list now. And the exile that the entire inner sect pitied me for is the only reason I am not currently standing on a front line with a number on my back. A blessing in disguise. But the environment is not static. With every leader of the Zhoushan 18 dead by my hand, the Alliance mopped up the remainder in a season. I did not go. I sent a few Chen juniors for the practice and stayed home. And for the first time in 30 years, that sea was peaceful, which meant that the wartime trade boom, which has to go somewhere, landed on my docks. Both industries came of age that year. The boar farm, because I taught a slice of the beast-taming technique to men who herd pigs for a living. Blackthorn boars breed fast, eat spirit straw nobody else wants, and their dung feeds the Ganoderma beds, which is a closed loop I did not design so much as notice. Cheap spirit beast meat became a Uelian signature. Poor cultivators, the ones scraping along at 3rd and 4th layer with no clan and no sponsor, could suddenly afford meat with chi in it, every week, at a market on a rock in the South Sea. I am prouder of that than of most of the fights, and the purple-veined Ganoderma hatchery went to mass production, every 3 months, on standing contracts. Then I started a 3rd industry, and this one was a joke that got out of hand. Years earlier, in the outer sect, somebody gave me a jar of Monkey King wine. I drank most of it, and I kept the dregs, because I had a vague idea and no time. I used those dregs as a starter culture. Uelian spirit wine now sells in 4 ports. Xiaohei swept the whole archipelago, every island, and found every hidden spirit field, every wild fruit tree, every seep of qi anyone had missed for 400 years. Chen Bojun ran all of it, and was, as far as I can tell, the happiest he has ever been in his life. Because it meant I did not have to, and could go and sit on a cushion instead. And after a year of 3 drops a day, the flying illusion spirit vine hit 1,000-year potency. 3 years to the day since I landed on that island. I refined above my grade, which you are not supposed to do, and got 3 Ningzhen pills out of 1 furnace, 4 with Peng Song's. And the act of succeeding at a formula genuinely beyond me did something to the back of my head. My sea of consciousness went into a storm for 2 days, and when it came out the other side, my spiritual sense had compressed into something denser and colder. Divine sense, the real thing, which was exactly the trigger my stalled half-step had been waiting for. So I sat down on the Tai Yi cushion, in a garden on an island in the corner of the world, 10 years after waking up in a stranger's body. 1 year of assessment, 2 in the outer courtyard. 3 in the inner sect, 3 in the South Sea. 10 years is a fleeting moment. A cultivator should defy fate. Only by outrunning time do you earn the right to the summit. And I swallowed the pill. I sat like a statue for 2 years. I do not remember any of it, so I will tell you what other people saw. My aura went out from that spring like a tide coming in. First the garden, then the residence, then the peak, then the towns. Until every cultivator on that archipelago was living inside a pressure like walking through syrup. They could not explain it. They did not sleep well. And they told each other there was something at the center of the island that breathes the wind and the clouds and presses down on heaven and earth. For 2 years. Then it receded, over about 3 months, and then it was gone entirely. And Chenbo Jun, who had walked the perimeter of my garden every single day for 2 years to guard a man sitting still, sat down on the path outside and had to face the possibility that it had failed. Meanwhile, the war did what wars do. At Tianmen Pass, Guan Fenglie recovered, killed 2 true essence third layers, 8 seconds, and around 20 firsts in a single battle. An elder of the other side stepped in to stop him. Then a Dongzhen realm immortal stepped in on the other side. And the two of them leveled a mountain range several hundred miles long and destroyed Tianmen Pass so completely that it is no longer on maps. 10,000 spirit origin cultivators dead so far, hundreds of true essence, and Hanhai true essence cultivators were loose all over the South Sea, disguised as pirates and merchants and saboteurs, which is why the polite carve-up on Flying Spirit Island had stopped meaning anything within a year. I came out of it, and I had not simply broken through. 4 Ningzhen pills, plus 300 mid-grade spirit stones taken off Bai Hung's corpse, carried me straight past early and past middle in one continuous motion. True essence first layer. Late stage, 1 step from perfection. 3 or 4 years, saved in one sitting. By hardware alone, divine sense and alchemy, and an ocean of true essence, I matched a true essence second. With the perfections and the sword planting technique on top, I was well past any normal first layer. The 2 years of breakthrough improved me more than the 10 years in front of them. Then I read the war reports and took my own measure honestly, which I recommend to nobody who wants to feel good. Guan Fenglie is now being called the first man in 300 years, the next Water Sword Immortal, undefeated in the early True Essence realm. A month before I woke up, he killed the Hanhai sect's strongest genius of the generation on an arena in front of several thousand people, and a Dongzhen realm immortal had to be physically prevented from intervening. Bing Yu Yao freezes hundreds of feet of battlefield with 1 sword. Wei Qiaolei rides Heaven's Thunder, and there is a new name behind us now. A boy called Han Wushang, and Chen Xuanyi, who killed 2 True Essence Realm cultivators while still Spirit Origin, has been comprehensively forgotten in 2 years of silence. Compared with Guan Fenglie, slightly inferior. Compared with Bing Yu Yao, about the same. And I want to write down what I actually felt reading those reports, because it is the least dignified sentence in this entire story. It really makes me want to go. Then I stayed exactly where I was and refused the celebration banquet Chenbo Jun had already ordered the food for. The island now paid me 50,000 spirit stones a year, and I could not have cared less, because the promotion had broken the single best thing about me. Spirit essence became true essence. Spiritual sense became divine sense. Both of them are strictly better. Both of them are also completely different substances, and my control, which had been at 80 or 90% after 4 years of obsessive work, fell straight through to below 50. 1/10 of an overturning sea now equaled my full-power 9th perfection strike, and less than half of what I spent was arriving at the target. They replaced the gunpowder with high explosive, and I had to rebuild every gun I own. So I spent 2 months on a bare reef 10 miles offshore, punching craters into the ocean, which terrified every fisherman in the archipelago for about 9 days, until the residents sent out a notice, at which point they started sailing out to watch, which was worse. 70% control by the end of it. Already better than most True Essence 3rd and 4th layers, and still not what I had. And then the next problem, which I had been ignoring for a year. I did not have a life-bound treasure. Not one. The Xuanyuan armor is near high grade, and now nearly useless to me. The Silver Shadow is intermediate, which at True Essence is a butter knife. The needles are needles. There are 3 ways to get one. Buy it at auction, and I could not afford the bidding. Loot it from a ruin, and I knew of none. Or earn sect merit by killing Hanhai cultivators at the front. I refused the front. So I went beachcombing in the outer sea like a peasant, and discovered that the outer sea has been stripped clean by True Essence cultivators for 300 years. Everything worth having is in the inland sea, where the monsters live and where the war is. And then my cultivation hit a bottleneck too, and I sat in my beautiful garden with 50,000 spirit stones a year and admitted it out loud. Staying home is safe, and it is exactly why I cannot progress. Without battle, there is no fast growth. The universe answered that with an order from Peng Song, which is how the universe usually answers me. Patrol duty. Hunt Hanhai infiltrators in the South Sea. A sect obligation, not a request, and not refusable. And the Guo Grand Elder immediately proposed we do it together, which told me he had been waiting for the excuse. I arrived at the rendezvous flying on a sword, and the Grand Elder, 300 years old, stopped in the middle of a sentence and did not finish it, because flight is the true essence realm's front door. And the last time he saw me I was half-step, and 6 or 7 years before that I had been an 8th layer nobody reading a scroll in his vault. Bai Tianyu and Wei Qingnan, who had both spent the previous meeting being gently condescending to me, stopped doing that inside a minute and started treating me as a peer, and neither of them was subtle about the switch. Then he laid out the bounty system the war had created, and it is worth knowing, because it explains a great deal about the behavior of everybody on that ocean for the next 2 years. Kill a Hanhai True Essence first layer, 50 to 100 merit points. Second layer, 2 to 300. Third layer, 4 to 600. And you keep whatever is on the corpse. The sect had accidentally invented an industry. His proposal, a small nest of Hanhai infiltrators had been located. Almost certainly no more than 3 of them, almost certainly nothing above True Essence middle. 3 True Essence Realm cultivators against 3, even odds, which nobody sane accepts. With me, he said, the odds turn. The nest was in a flooded cave in a field of barren reefs, and it was not what we had been told. Luo Guilong, True Essence 3rd layer, and 2 2nd layers under him. And they were not infiltrating. They were waiting to extract somebody. A man named Zheng Mingxi, who had told his own sect that he was carrying a major secret about the Yuzhou cultivation world in the South Sea, and who was consequently being hunted across an ocean by 7 True Essence cultivators, one of them a 6th layer. Nobody has ever told me what that secret was. I have asked 4 people. 2 of them stopped answering my letters. I got through their submerged warning array the way I get through everything, by reading spiritual fluctuations inside moving water. And I opened the fight with a punch in the back that shattered a True Essence 3rd layer's shield and put him through a hill. Whatever condescension Wei Qingnan had left died on that reef. And then it went wrong, because Shui Yizhou, badly wounded, produced a life-bound treasure that none of the 4 of us had ever seen the like of. 2 beads, 1 black, 1 white. Yin-Yang Primordial Magnetic Mother. They merged into a wheel in the air and fired a dark red beam, and that beam tore straight through the Guo Grand Elder's finishing move. And the Guo Grand Elder is True Essence 4th, and it drew his blood. I got the history later, and it is exactly as pleasant as you would expect. A senior of Shui Yizhou's own sect died getting the raw material out of a deep-sea secret realm. Shui Yizhou was the only other survivor. He then hired pirates to slaughter that senior's family, and then slaughtered the pirates, and kept it. 1 shot cost 1/3 of his true essence, and it can wound a 4th layer. He fired it once, and then he abandoned both of his companions on the spot as bait, and broke out through what he had correctly identified as the weakest point of our ring, which was me. And he came through intending to kill me on his way past, because you do not leave a 1st layer behind you. The Guo Grand Elder shouted a warning he had no way to back up. And I answered with the thing I built out of my own palm technique. Sword drawing technique, triple waves, 3 stacked peak bursts in 1 draw, and it met that yin-yang beam in the air and held it to a draw, which is not supposed to be possible, since a True Essence 4th layer had just failed to do the same thing. I was blown backward off my feet, and I stepped into wind and cloud formless body, which at True Essence I can finally afford to run at full power for more than 4 seconds. I reappeared behind Shui Yizhou in the half-second he was dizzy from his own recoil, and I took his head off. Around me, 3 True Essence Realm cultivators, with a century of work behind them, exchanged a look. Nobody said anything. I know exactly what that look was, because I have given it to people since. 1,200 mid-grade spirit stones split 4 ways. And then I asked for something instead of a bigger share, and got it instantly, gladly. With visible relief that I was being so reasonable. I asked for the 3 dead men's life-bound treasures, because a life-bound treasure is considered scrap the moment its owner dies. The dead man's soul imprint poisons it. A stranger who picks one up gets maybe 1/10 of its power, forever, and it will never bond to him properly. Every cultivator alive knows this. Everybody treats them as junk. They handed me 3 pieces of junk and thought I was being sentimental. I still walked away with 800 mid-grade stones on top, by trading off the talismans and pills I did not want. The new page had appeared on my panel the day I made True Essence, and I had been staring at it for months. A decomposition furnace, straight out of the game. I remember the icon. I remember spending actual money on that game, and it does not do what the game's version did. It will not break an artifact into materials. It will not refund an upgrade. I spent a week testing, and it refused all of it. And then I worked out the rule, and the rule is the most important thing I have learned about my own cheat. The panel is a piece of my own spirit. It can only do what a spirit can do. It cannot conjure matter. It cannot rewind time. But there is exactly one thing a cultivator's spirit does, given years of grinding effort, and every alchemist and artifact refiner in this world knows it and considers it not worth doing. Scour a dead man's imprint and blood out of a life-bound treasure. I fed the yin-yang beads in. The furnace drained divine sense out of me in a flood until my vision went gray and I had to grip the table. A few drops of red blood squeezed out from between the two beads and hit the floor, and the dead treasure came back to life in my hands, blazing, whole, unbonded. Let me put that in money, because that is the only honest way to say it. A used life-bound treasure sells for 100-odd spirit stones as scrap. A whole magic treasure, which is the True Essence realm's own tier, an entire artifact class above anything a spirit origin cultivator is permitted to hold, is worth tens or hundreds of thousands, 100-fold margin, 1,000-fold on a good one. On an item class that is otherwise a consumable, because every single owner ruins it forever by dying. And I saw the danger in the same breath, and I want it recorded that I saw it immediately. If this ever leaks, the Cloudwater Sect protecting me does not mean I am safe. It means I become the Sect's dedicated recycling tool for the rest of my life, in a room, with a quota. Sell rarely, sell quietly, never sell greedily. And then the idea arrived, and it has not left me since. The Yunhai mountain range front, where hundreds of True Essence cultivators have already died, is at this moment producing a mountain of worthless life-bound treasures, and the black markets in the border towns are selling them for scrap by the crate. I wanted to go so badly it was physical, and I made myself wait until I was bottlenecked everywhere else, which took 8 months. I counted them. I did not bind the yin-yang beads as my own life-bound treasure, which everybody I have described this to thinks was a mistake. They are too far from my system. I am water. They are magnetism. Binding a treasure that fights the shape of your own technique is how men spend a century at the same layer. So I simply carried them and used them to trap and cage rather than to blast, which is a role I had been missing since Song Ming-Xuan handed me a shield spell. And I studied the yin-yang magnetism itself, at length, in my own time. A man from Earth understands the specific idea of two opposed poles considerably better than the people here do. And if there are 3,000 great Taos in this world, this is one of the highest ones. The other two came out of the furnace as well. Yue Jinlun, a crescent blade that is nothing but edge, no bulk, no weight, and which cuts a low-grade artifact in half like cutting mud. And a jade bottle that stores and pours out enough seawater to make a lake several miles across, and which gets stronger when fed essence of gui water, of which I can now extract 10 or more drops a day where I used to get 1. 30% stronger overall in one afternoon out of 3 pieces of junk. And the realization I had been avoiding for 8 months arrived with them, and I finally wrote it down. Only combat is the best way to break through. No wonder the men who live on the edge of death advance so fast. They are not braver than me. They are simply in the room where it happens. Half a day from home, a True Essence third late strike came out of the water at my back and destroyed an afterimage. Perfection level wind and cloud formless body, fired on pure instinct before I had consciously registered anything at all. That technique has saved my life more times than every weapon I own combined, and it has never once killed anybody. The attacker was Zheng Mingxi, the Hanhai fugitive off the wanted board, the one being hunted by 7 True Essence cultivators, the one with a 1,000 mid-grade spirit stone private bounty on his head, which is why I had memorized his face months earlier while pretending to browse. He recognized what he had swung at and immediately tried to run, which was correct. I caged him with the yin-yang beads and hit him with Overturning Sea, and Overturning Sea is a True Essence attack now, and it visibly frightened a third layer. Then he turned out to be a talisman cultivator, which I had never fought. He draws patterns in the empty air with his fingers and things come out of them. He pulled down a thunder dragon in about 4 seconds and threw it at me. And it was his ultimate move, and it only managed to draw. And I watched him arrive at his conclusion out loud, with real horror. This is definitely the Cloudwater Sect's next generation prodigy. Then he spread both hands and tried the oldest line in the book. "I mistook you for someone else," he said. "Our strengths are similar. Shall we call it quits and make peace?" He offered me a peace gift to seal it. A yellow rank formation. Breaking talisman, worth thousands of mid-grade stones, held out on an open palm. And I drifted closer to take it, all greed and forgiveness, nodding. Neither of us took a second step. Both attacks fired at the same instant, exactly the same instant. The sea cratered for hundreds of feet in every direction, and the water came down on both of us like weather. Then we looked at each other through the spray, in silence, and each of us saw the same filthy little heart looking back. And I want to defend that trick, because it is not stupid. In a fight in the wild, enemies genuinely do sometimes shake hands and walk away. And plenty of true essence cultivators are simple-minded, or crack under pressure, or are simply tired. It just did not work on either of us. My actual reason for refusing was not honor. I could not leave an unknown enemy camped a half day from my own base, and I still wanted the answers. Why is he here? Why the enormous private bounty? Why me? And his entire answer, which he gave me while we were both bleeding, is the thesis of this whole ocean. There are no so many whys. In the end, everything depends on strength. Half an hour. Dozens of miles of open sea. We sank 2 rocky islands. Merchant ships changed course at the horizon and ran. He threw 20 talismans a breath, each one about as strong as a full true essence third layer strike, drawn in the air faster than I could count them. And I answered with the Great River sword art at major achievement, and neither of us could finish it. And what finally broke his nerve was not damage. It was that I never ran out. 4th layer Yiyuan Guishui recovery on my side, obsessive power control on my side, which by then was giving me 2 or 3 times the effect out of 1/10 of the strength. And on his side, a man 2 entire layers above me, burning out. So he spent his own foundation to end it, and it was genuinely magnificent, and I have not forgotten it. He pierced his own chest and used his heart's blood as ink, and for paper, he used a profound rank blank talisman that he had been nurturing in his own dantian for a decade, and he rode a blood dragon 100 feet long, and the sky went red for miles in every direction. That technique is above the Guo Grand Elder's ceiling, and the Guo Grand Elder is true essence 4th. And the wound he gave himself writing it would cost him 10 years to heal, even if he won. I threw all 3 magic treasures up at once. The dragon ate the moon wheel. Then it ate the jade bottle. Both destroyed outright, a fortune, gone in 4 seconds. And I was delighted, because I could feel the power draining out of that dragon with every single thing it swallowed. And that was the entire plan. I pulled the yin-yang beads back before they were spent. I cut the dragon's last strength with a trace of the sword planting technique. And while Guo Han was laughing up at the sky with his true essence at 0, I appeared behind him and put a finger-thick beam of light through his skull. It cost me everything I owned that could be broken. I got 700 merit points, 1,000 mid-grade bounty, and no answers at all. Because I had to kill instead of capture, and I have been annoyed about that for years. 3 Hanhai True Essence Realm encounters. In the South Sea, around 1 exiled 1st layer nobody. Old Ghost Tang, True Essence late, standing behind the Zhoushan ambush. Shui Yi Zhou's cell in the Triangle Sea, waiting for an extraction. And now, Guo Han, on the only road home, on the one day I was carrying everything I had just looted. Once is a coincidence. 3 times is not possible. They are connected. And if Guo Han was under orders, then there is exactly 1 man in this ocean senior enough to have given them. Which means old Ghost Tang may never have left. I dumped the body in the sea and went home. Salvagers arrived within the hour and started fighting each other over shards of my broken jade bottle. And above the clouds, where none of us were looking, the air rippled open like the surface of water and became a mirror. And a figure wrapped in mist stood in it and watched the direction I had flown, and its pupils flickered. And then the mirror closed. Nobody saw it, not the salvagers, not me. I have only found out that it happened at all much, much later, and I still do not know who it was. The island had outrun my plans while I was away. And it had outrun them because of 1 sentence I said years earlier, offhand, to a man who herds pigs. Improve the breeding, or the yield, or the meat, and you get the complete beast taming technique from me, plus spirit stones by contribution. In a world where every high cultivator despises base productivity, where growing things is what you do because you failed at fighting, I paid for invention. And 2 second and 3rd layer nobodies, whose names nobody outside this archipelago will ever know, have since worked out castration for temperament and meat quality, a cheap feed mix out of spirit straw waste, and a sanitation schedule that cut the herd death rate by 2/3. They earned the full technique, both of them, and they are now the archipelago's first professional beastmasters, and they have apprentices. Same story on the Ganoderma, and standing in my own garden reading their reports, I said the only genuinely homesick thing I have said out loud in this world. It has been more than a decade, and I still cannot forget that world. And then the thought that followed, which I put away immediately and have taken back out roughly once a year since. If you do not want to adapt to the world, then make the world adapt to you. If one day I stand at this world's peak, will a world that has not changed in 100,000 years change because I arrived? The loot from Guo Han turned out better than I deserved. The formation-breaking talisman was real after all. He had actually been offering me a genuine treasure with one hand while preparing to kill me with the other, which is somehow worse. And a void escape talisman teleports you hundreds of miles in a random direction, instantly, once. He never got to use it. He died holding it. I own it now, and I have carried it every day since, and I have not used it either. And in the corner of the junk pile, there was a token, palm-sized, dark blue, and my divine sense read it as completely, perfectly empty. I want you to understand how wrong that is. My divine sense reads the inside of sealed containers. It reads the impurities in a pill through the wall of a furnace, and it looked at an object sitting in my own hand and reported nothing there. Visible to the eye, undetectable to the spirit. I held it up against the sun, and 4 characters came out of the dark blue. Linghai sword token. And I went and dug out the other one, the black one, engraved Linghai, that I took out of a wooden house at the end of a fog forest, in a garden belonging to a dead man who grew things and wrote it down, which had been mapped by an assassin who ambushed me on the Luo Shui River more than 10 years earlier, and who died without ever coming back. 2 tokens, from 2 men who never met, from 2 ends of my own life, converging on one desk on an island in the South Sea. The Linghai Sword Sect was, 300 years ago, the largest native power in the South Sea. Their grand elder was Dongzhen Realm, and in the Great War they went over to the Hanhai Sect. So the Cloudwater Sect killed their Dongzhen elder personally, stormed the mountain gate, and erased them. 1 disciple in 10 got out alive. Nobody in the South Sea discusses it, because the men who did it are the current leadership of my own sect, and because at least 4 families on this ocean have grandfathers who were Linghai disciples and would prefer that not to come up. My black token is a disciple's token. Common. There were thousands. The dark blue one that blanks out under divine sense is a sect leader's, or a grand elder's. I put both of them in a box and told nobody. And I want you to note the date, because everything after this comes out of that box. Guo Han's head was worth 850 merit points and 1,000 mid-grade spirit stones, and I went to the sect exchange to spend it, feeling extremely wealthy, and discovered that I am poor. The top of that list is beyond me by orders of magnitude, not by a factor, by orders. So I bought raw materials instead of finished pills, because I am an entry-rank alchemist, and I would rather refine them myself and gain the proficiency, which is a decision no rich man ever makes, and a true essence tier Gui water pill formula, which was the actual point of the trip. I got a 30% inner disciple discount at the counter, in public, and the room noticed, and I enjoyed that more than I should have. Then the careful part, which took a week. I bought a face and aura concealing mask in the Tiananmen market. Then I bought several more masks from several other stalls on several other days, badly, like a man who does not know what he is doing. I spent days learning to actually use them, which is harder than it sounds, because an aura is a habit. Then I flew 100 miles out to sea, dived, and swam dozens of kilometers underwater to break the trail. And only then, in the dark, did I put a mask on. The black market of the South Sea is a set of caverns that open only at night, and everyone in them is in a black robe, and nobody looks at anybody. They sell treasures, they sell pills, and in one corner they sell cultivators, and I walked past that quickly and I have not stopped thinking about it. At a corner stall, a dying old man at half-step true origin was selling 3 things off a cloth: a rotted spear, a saber crusted with black blood, and a gray longsword under so much packed dirt that you could not see the metal. 3 used life-bound treasures, priced as scrap, 500 spirit stones for the lot. He did not look up when he took my money, and nothing happened. That is the part I want to record. No villain across the cavern noticed the odd purchase. Nobody followed me out. The stall keeper had forgotten my face within the hour, and he was not being careless. Among hundreds of hooded people, who is bored enough to stare at an ordinary passerby? I went home and made the new ghee water pill formula work, at a 50% success rate, which for a true essence tier formula on my first month is not embarrassing. 3 months of refining and swallowing my own pills at full burn. True essence second layer. 6 months from first perfection, where it should have cost me 3 or 4 years. It also ate almost every treasure I had bought, and I would do it again tomorrow. For scale, since people always ask, a spirit origin cultivator lives 120 to 160 years. A true essence cultivator lives 240, up to 300 at the peak of it. I was in my 20s, and then I ran the 3 black market treasures through the decomposition furnace, and the filthiest of the three did something I was not ready for. The gray longsword. The one that looked like it had been buried for 4 centuries. It came out of my furnace black and razored, and so light in the hand that I checked twice, and with 2 ancient characters standing on the blade near the guard. Black sky. A high-grade magic treasure. There are true essence late cultivators on this ocean who will never own one. It adds 30% to every sword strike I throw, forever, at no cost. And selling it would fund me all the way to the 4th layer. I will never sell it. That is not sentiment. Somebody, somewhere, may recognize a dead man's weapon, and the one thing I cannot afford is for a single person to start wondering how a used, life-bound treasure came back to life. Use them, never trade them. The saber and the spear came out only low grade, and I cannot use either weapon, so they became throwables, and if it ever comes to it, self-destructs. And in the middle of testing all 3, I found the real discovery, which was not any of the swords. My divine sense, built by the Tai Yi fragment and an alchemist's rank on top of it, can drive 3 magic treasures at once. Most true essence cultivators manage one, and are proud of it. The stronger the spirit, the smaller every bottleneck becomes, and the better every method works. Those Transmigrator seniors in all those novels were absolutely right about that, and about almost nothing else. I sat down and honestly reassessed myself, and concluded that I could now beat the Guo Han of 4 months earlier, inside 200 moves. 2 men came to my island and asked for the token back. Tan Nansheng of the Yuhua Sect, Confucian robes, extremely courteous, and Miao Bo Kang of Trap Island, who said about 9 words the entire visit. They knew I had killed Guo Han, which told me something about how fast news moves out here, and they wanted the dark blue Linghai sword token because Guo Han had stolen it from them, off a merchant ship 4 months earlier, which is what the 1,000-stone private bounty had actually been about the whole time. Not the war, not a secret about the Yuzhou cultivation world, a theft. And then they told me the rest of it, because they wanted something, and you cannot ask for something without explaining why. When the Linghai sword sect fell, its sect leader fired a mutual destruction array as his last act, and sank the entire island, mountain gate, treasury, vault, all of it, into a deep sea abyss that even Dongzhen realm cultivators cannot casually enter. The Cloudwater elders had already taken the top treasures off the surface, and then the ground went out from under everything else, and 300 years of everybody's speculation went down with it. The tokens are the key, and after 3 centuries with no spirit stones feeding it, the sinking array has finally worn thin enough that the tokens can pull the ruin back up, or at minimum, open a door. They invited me in as a partner, and offered to buy the token outright if I preferred, and were visibly braced for me to be difficult. I took the partnership immediately, and I told them exactly why, out loud, because it saves everyone time, not courage, resources. If not for the Guo family's hunt and Guo Han's corpse, the 2nd layer would have cost me years instead of 6 months. In cultivation, effort matters and talent matters, and so does what you can buy, and anybody who tells you otherwise is being fed by somebody. 2 weeks out, the sea turned black, permanent storm, lightning with no sound in it, and spiritual chi at almost nothing, which for a cultivator is like walking into a room where the air has been thinned by a third. Worse than that, the heavenly mechanism itself is deranged there. Divination fails, direction sense fails, formations behave incorrectly. Because it is the aftershock of the battle 300 years ago, still burning. It shattered 100 miles of sea when Cloudwater killed a Dongzhen realm Grand Elder, and it has not settled in 3 centuries. A spirit origin perfection who wanders in there dies of attrition without ever meeting an enemy. No true essence cultivator has any reason to go. The loose cultivators call it the land the gods abandoned. I looked at 100 miles of ocean, still bleeding from one afternoon's work, 300 years later, and thought a thought I had been circling for a decade. This is what the Cloudwater sect really is. 8 tokens, 8 men. That is not a delegation size, that is the complete inventory. 8 Linghai sword tokens exist in the world, and every one of their holders was standing on that deck. 1 man each, agreed in advance so that nobody could pack the expedition with cousins. A black-robed formation master, who was the entire reason the trip was possible. A bald man called Lu Xiao, Hu Shuo, Wen Tao, and somebody in the group at True Origin 5th or 6th layer, who did not introduce himself and whom nobody asked. We poured true essence into the tokens for 15 minutes, and the seabed cracked. An island-sized shadow started coming up out of the abyss, and the sea level of that entire region rose several meters while we stood on it. And I did the arithmetic while everybody else was cheering, and the arithmetic is unpleasant. The 8 of us together do not have anything close to enough true essence to lift an island. That ruin was rising under its own power. We just gave it permission. It surfaced far enough to fire a pillar of chi into the sky that the whole South Sea could see. which is a public announcement, visible for 1,000 miles, that treasure has been born here. And the 8 of us stood and watched it go up and understood exactly what had just happened to our schedule. Full surfacing would take a day. So we took the Formation Master's shortcut instead, which he described as slightly risky, and which was not. The 8 tokens went into a formation plate, and he tore a spatial passage out of the air with them, and the tokens crumbled into sand in the plate. All 8, spent. The passage holds for half a month. If you are inside when it closes, you are inside forever. And just before I jumped, I looked back over my shoulder, because something touched the edge of my divine sense. Behind me, the air rippled open like water into a mirror shaped like an enormous eye. There was a figure in it. It hesitated, and it closed. Meanwhile, across the entire South Sea, every cultivator who could see that pillar of light dropped whatever they were doing and ran for it. I want to tell you about one of them, because he is the one I actually think about. Feng Jian, 50-something, stuck at 9th level perfection for 20 years. He left his father's small island clan at 20, shouting on the dock that his father had lived his whole life humiliated and now wanted his son to do the same. He then spent 30 years failing, slowly and then quickly. Once, about a decade in, he sneaked home to look at the peach blossoms. Same island, same trees, a new clan chief who turned out to be his younger brother. He stood in the lane and looked at the gate for a long time, and never found the nerve to knock. And then he sailed away again and did not come back. And when a pillar of light went up over the god-forsaken land, Feng Jian put out in one flimsy boat into a permanent storm that kills spirit origin perfections by attrition. "This is the last time," he said to nobody on the water. "If this yields nothing, I am done. Father, your son is unfilial. I did not meet him. I never spoke to him. I only heard the story afterward, the way you hear these things, second-hand, at a table. He is every single person who went into that ruin, and there were thousands of them, and I want him written down." The 8 of us came out of the passage, and we were not in a treasury. We were standing on a plain of white bones that went to the horizon, and there were true Essence Realm auras still buried in some of them, 300 years old and not gone. And then the dark at the edge of the plain turned gold and started moving. Gold-eating bees. Each individual bee is below spirit essence middle, which is to say it is nothing, which is to say you could kill one by closing your hand. They eat metal. Their stings pierce true essence and then corrode it, and they devour incoming attacks. 8 true Essence Realm cultivators threw a combined strike into that cloud, and the cloud absorbed it like a curtain absorbing a thrown ball. Everybody scattered. And in the scatter, an attack landed accidentally, in the air, directly in front of me, costing me exactly the one breath I needed to get clear. And the black-robed Formation Master Wang looked back at me over his shoulder as the swarm came down, and smiled, coldly, deliberately, with eye contact. Nobody else saw it. Everybody else was running. My shield lasted a second, maybe 2. I went into the ground head first, straight down through rock, and the bees ate the earth after me. In pure desperation, buried in rock with a swarm chewing toward me, I took out the yin-yang beads, and the swarm inside the field went insane. Bees fell out of the air. The ones still flying started tearing each other apart, and the rest broke off and fled from me the way animals flee from a natural predator, not from a threat. I lay in a hole and worked out why while it was happening. Bees at home coordinate with chemistry. These do not. These use electromagnetism, and I was holding the yin-yang primordial magnetic mother. And I had just jammed the command network of an entire hive, which is almost certainly the real reason the old Linghai sword sect wrote in its own records that only a true essence peak or a Dongzhen immortal could harvest their honey. It was never about power. It was about having the one thing that turns them off. And nobody knew what it was. So I did not run. I followed the swarm home, because gold-eating bee royal jelly raises an early true essence cultivator a whole layer per small bottle. And there had been nobody harvesting for 300 years. That damn song, I said out loud, climbing out of a hole with my robes half-eaten, delivered a huge opportunity right to my doorstep. The hive is a hill of bones 3 or 4 stories high, glued together with bee gel. I threw a great river sword art at it to probe, and the hive swallowed it whole. And then the hive answered. Thousands of stingers, fired simultaneously, in a sheet. Anti-chi needles that go through true essence like paper. And when they hit the silver shadow, they left dents in a sword I have carried for 10 years. And every single bee that fires one dies doing it. It is a suicide volley. They spent hundreds of their own to warn me off. Less than 1,000th of that hive nearly wrecked me, which taught me the actual lesson of that day, and it is not about bees. If I had charged in trusting the magnetic beads, the volley from inside would have finished me in the dark. And nobody would ever have found out where I went. So I did it the expensive way. I threw the low-grade magic treasure spear from the black market into the swarm. Let them swallow it, let them close around it, and detonated it. The hive hill blew open, and half of it came down. The queen went deeper into the bone plane with a bodyguard of survivors, and while the rest were scrambled by the magnetic field, I walked into a broken hive, tore the comb open with my hands, and filled one small jade bottle with royal jelly so concentrated it would not even flow properly. Then I filled a much bigger bottle with about half the hive's ordinary honey, which is itself a rare treasure that sells by the drop. And then the bees outside started massing again, in a column, and I stopped being greedy. Before I ran, I snapped off a corner of the comb. 8 or 9 bee pupae in it, a dozen live workers, sealed into my spirit beast bag. Because if you can steal a hive, you can breed a queen. And if you can breed a queen, you own the only gold-eating bee colony outside a sealed ruin. On an island that already has a Ganoderma hatchery, a boar farm, and a man who is extremely good at logistics. Then I was gone, hundreds of miles, at speed, underground where I could. About 50 drops of royal jelly, 3 centuries of accumulation, more potent than anything the old sect ever sold in its life, because the old sect harvested and I looted. Back at the passage mouth, outside, hundreds of spirit origin cultivators were standing around not daring to go first. One of them had rushed it early, clipped the edge of the portal, and been torn in half. And the halves were still there, which was doing wonders for everyone's enthusiasm. Then the true essence names started arriving. Mad Blade of the South Sea, who was born a mortal martial artist, whose family was slaughtered, who hid for 30 years, came back, killed every single person responsible, and then took the title Mad Blade off the previous Mad Blade by removing his head. A white-haired old master Huang, who read the entire scene in one glance from the deck of his boat and did not get off it. A young lord with a fan, who I never got the name of. Mad Blade went in first, immediately, like a fool. Old Master Guo led him, and smiled, because a fool who goes first is a scout you did not have to pay. And on the other side of that passage, Mad Blade smiled at exactly the same calculation, in reverse, because he was not there for treasure at all. He was there for a rumor that the Linghai sword sect died in the middle of forging a spiritual artifact, that it was never finished, and that nobody ever took it out. Then the spirit origin crowd talked itself into courage, which crowds always do, and poured in, onto a plain of bones, into a hive of enraged gold-eating bees. I have thought about that a great deal, and there was nothing I could have done. I want that written down too. I refined the royal jelly on the Taiyi cushion. True essence, second layer late, in a few days. And that was only the surface of it. Most of the medicine was still sitting in my body undigested, banked, waiting. Because a body can only convert so fast no matter what you pour into it. I kept 2 or 3 drops back to try to raise a new queen out of the stolen pupae, which is the single most optimistic thing I have ever done. And I sat there and counted, because 10 years of exile were nearly up. Guan Feng Lie, Bing Yu Yao, all of you. 10 years. How far have you gone? But it will be soon. And I want to be honest about the account I intend to collect when I get home, because I have had a long time to be reasonable about it, and I have not managed it. I was thrown out here as the conservative faction's public example. I know now that the factions are not villains. They are doctrines, and both doctrines are defensible, and reasonable men hold both. And I still lost the Ningzhen pill competition, and several years of my life to a scheduling decision. I am not so far gone as to be grateful for being suppressed. When I go back, that account is going to be reopened. But to settle that account properly, I would need to be able to stand next to Guan Feng Lie. So I need more. The Ruin Island has a medium to large spirit vein, and has been sealed, unfarmed and unhunted for 300 years, which means it is not a ruin. It is a wild, secret realm, full of true essence tier beasts, each of them sitting on top of a 1,000-year treasure, none of which anybody has touched since before my grandfather's grandfather. An unexplored adventure map. And the mountain protecting formation at the Sect gate was still intact, which meant nobody had broken in yet, which meant I had time. So I did not race for the gate like everybody else. I hunted my way toward it, and that is where I found the compounding trick that made the whole expedition, and I doubt anyone else in that ruin could have used it. The undigested royal jelly in my body refines faster under combat stress. Every other true essence cultivator in there avoided beast fights wherever possible, because a serious fight costs you a day of recovery and gains you 1 treasure. For me, with 4th layer Yiyuan Gui Shui recovery and 50 drops of banked jelly, the more I fought, the stronger I got, while collecting whatever each beast had been guarding. I fought everything on my line of march, deliberately, for weeks. And in doing it, without ever intending to, I cut a completely safe road across a monster-infested island, which the later arrivals found and followed and were extremely grateful for. The The last one on that road was a serpent, true essence tier, 40 feet of it, and it went down to the black sky longsword doing the thing I had only theorized about. One stroke that splits into thousands of small blades in the air, a rain of them. And the snake tried to leave, and I took its head off while it was leaving. And it had been guarding a snake tongue fruit, which does not make you stronger. What it does is accelerate the refining of other medicines. Which is to say, it is the one object in that entire ruin custom-built for a man walking around with 50 drops of undigested gold eating bee royal jelly sitting in his body doing nothing. 500 mid-grade at auction, if one ever reached an auction. Today, I said, standing over a dead snake with a fruit in my hand, I can break through to true essence, second perfection. And a voice from about 100 feet up said, "Boy, I will take that fruit. Get out of the way and I will spare your life." True essence, third layer. Looking down at a young second layer who had visibly just spent himself on a boss fight, and doing the arithmetic that every robber in every wilderness in every world has ever done. Fan Hong Rui, of the South Sea Rogue Cultivator Alliance. An orphan who got his start by coercing a cultivation legacy out of an old Taoist, and who spent his entire spirit origin career as a bandit in everything but the paperwork. And there were spectators, because of course there were. About a dozen spirit origin cultivators who had followed my safe road across the island, and were now standing at the tree line watching a man take a fruit off the person whose road they were standing on. One young cultivator said out loud that this was disgraceful. An older one told him to be quiet, and then explained it to him. And the explanation is the truest thing anybody said in that ruin. On an adventure, he said, your worst enemy is never the beast in the forest. It is the gentle-looking man standing next to you. And Kong Ming, 100 feet up, heard every word of that, because at true essence third layer, you hear everything. And he hit them with a divine sense strike. 12 people went down on their knees at once with blood coming out of their mouths and noses. And then he raised one finger to flick them out of existence, casually, mid-conversation with me, and I shot it down, calmly, without a word, without any expression on my face at all. I do not know those people, not one of their names. They had followed my road because it was safe, and they had contributed nothing to me, and they would have taken the fruit themselves if they could have. And I put a beam of light through that finger strike before it landed, and I still cannot give you a good reason. Kong Ming turned around and looked at me properly for the first time, and opened with his signature, yellow tier martial art, floating cloud sky sleeve, the technique he had once used to kill an equal in a straight fight, which is the hardest thing a cultivator can do, and his sleeves spread out across that sky until they blotted the sun off the ground. Every one of the watchers wrote me off. I heard one of them say it, that young upstart is finished. And I raised the black sky longsword and made one ordinary-looking stroke. Every sword within tens of miles rang in its scabbard. The watchers said afterward that they saw a river of sword intent wide enough to split the sky in half, coming down. The floating cloud sky sleeve came apart inch by inch, unraveling from the edges in, and Kong Ming went through a hill. Now, I owe you an explanation of that stroke, because it looked like nothing, and it is the entire point of my life. A martial skill has 4 tiers: beginner, minor achievement, major achievement, and perfection. And perfection does not mean you have mastered the art. Perfection means you understand it better than the man who invented it. I have several at perfection. Every one of them bent off its original road onto mine, because I never learned any of them properly in the first place. And that stroke was 3 of them fused into one motion. The frame was the great river sword art, water with no ceiling, scaling off whatever you can feed it. The stacking was overturning sea 3-fold waves, 3 separate loads in one delivery. And the compression and release was the sword drawing technique, which I have been practicing wrong on purpose since I was 15. There is a line in the martial novels of my old world about the man who gets a sword and then forgets the sword. The fixed forms have begun to disappear out of my mind. Kong Ming did not lose unfairly. He lost to 11 years of homework. And then Kong Ming, true essence third layer, feared across an entire region, crawled out of the rubble and kowtowed to me in his own blood. He offered himself as a slave. He offered the complete floating cloud sky sleeve manual. He put his forehead on the stone and kept it there. And I was genuinely physically shaken. And I want to explain why, because it is not squeamishness. How can there be such a ruthless person in this world? A man who can throw away every last scrap of his pride in 4 seconds to survive is not a coward. He is the single most dangerous kind of animal there is. That is exactly the man who claws his way back up over 20 years and burns your house down with your family in it. I asked him for a reason not to kill him, and he bought himself one breath by selling me the actual secret of that entire ruin. Before it fell, he said, the Linghai sword sect spent its entire treasury forging a second spiritual artifact, and Cloudwater's raid came before it was finished. The old one was carried off in the sack. The unfinished one is still down there. still in the fire vein under the mountain gate, still cooking. A spiritual artifact is the tier above magic treasure. A true essence, peak cultivator holding one, can fight a Donggen realm immortal. It is not a weapon. It is a strategic asset that changes what a region is. I nodded and said, "Oh, I see," and put a beam of light through his skull in the middle of his next sentence. "Sorry," I told the body. "I never promised to let you go." I checked his pouch afterward, and I want you to know what was in it, because I have thought about how close that was, more often than I have thought about any fight in this story. A Junshan seal, his life-bound treasure. Stored out of his dantian in a pouch, where a man can produce it in one motion. He had been setting up a, "let me show you the proof." I killed him one beat before it. I withdrew, sealed myself into a hollow with every formation plate I own, and ate the snake tongue fruit. It goes down like lava, and then it finds the banked royal jelly and burns it. And for 3 days I was not a person. I was a chemical reaction with a heartbeat. True essence second layer. Perfection. Half a year of work, saved in 70 hours. And there is still undigested jelly sitting in me. I also sat there afterwards and did an honest valuation of the plain white jade cushion I have been carrying since I took it off an assassin's corpse in the ocean years ago, and concluded that it is worth more to me than any magic treasure I own. Not for power, for concentration. Everything I have ever gotten, I got by being able to sit still longer than the person next to me. And I want to leave it here, on that island, with the sun coming through the hole a serpent's death made in the canopy. 11 years ago, I stood on a steel platform in front of 5,000 people who had already decided I was mediocre, and I won one fight with the free boxing they hand out on day 1, and then I lost 5. I was an 8th layer nobody from a family that had not put a name into the inner sect in a decade, and the commentator said out loud that my draw had extinguished any remaining hope, and he was being kind. Today, I am true essence, second layer perfection, standing in a sealed ruin nobody has walked in for 300 years. I am holding a high-grade magic treasure I made out of a 500 stone piece of scrap. I have a stolen hive in my bag, and a road named after me across an island of monsters. And I am, on the current honest accounting, the least important person in this story. Because somewhere under my feet, there is an unfinished spiritual artifact still cooking in a fire vein. And the man who fed me to a hive of bees is walking around somewhere in this same ruin. And he does not know yet that I turned around in time to see him smile. Because on the other side of an ocean, a 100-year-old Hanhai elder memorized my face and told me that his people have set their sights on me. And then a war started, and 5 of the 10 best of my generation are dead. Because 3 true Essence Realm assassins came at me from 3 directions in 18 months, and there is exactly one man senior enough to have sent all 3, and I have no evidence that he ever left. And because twice now, on 2 different oceans, with nobody else on the water, the empty air behind me has opened like the surface of a pool into a mirror shaped like an enormous eye, and something wrapped in mist has stood in it and watched the direction I flew. Both times it hesitated, both times it closed. I did not see either one. I only felt the edge of the second, for about a quarter of a second, and I turned around and there was nothing there but sky. I have spent 11 years being extremely careful about who notices me. Somebody has been watching me anyway, from above the clouds for at least 2 years. And in my storage pouch, right now, sitting next to a dead sect's blank blue key, the old black Linghai token that I took off a hermit's shelf in a fog forest a decade ago has started to tremble. It gets stronger the closer I walk to that mountain gate, and nobody in this world, including me, has the faintest